To think he actually time traveled to the Boruto timeline in the middle of the night. A strong flash of light, Madara suddenly descended upon Konoha during Naruto's reign as Hokage. Naruto, who was still working overtime in his office, suddenly looked grave. He and Kurama simultaneously sensed that aura, the one Kurama loathed the most. Naruto exclaimed it was impossible. He immediately opened the window behind him and jumped out. Right now, Konoha was hosting the Chunin exams. Candidates from other villages and the cages were all gathered in Konoha. As the Hokage revealed Naruto had to guarantee everyone's safety. Meanwhile, a very confused Madara tried to enter the village, but was stopped by Konoha guards. Due to his warring state's armor, feeling Madara's powerful aura, a guard trembling asked him if he was a samurai from the land of iron. If you don't have an invitation from the 7th Hokage, please leave immediately. Madara looked coldly at the two Chunin. He was once known as the god of shinobi. He only left the village a few years ago due to ideological differences with Hashirama. Has he been forgotten so quickly that these little runts can't recognize him? And what does 7th Hokage even mean? When he looked up, he realized there were actually 7 faces carved into the Hokage rock. Madara was instantly shocked. He recalled just moments ago he was fighting that pale guy, holding a red fishing rod. That was Otsutsuki Urashiki, who had traveled back in time to capture the Nine Tails. Due to Sasuke and Boruto's interference, Urashiki mistakenly time-traveled to the Warring States period of Madara and Hashirama. Madara had just finished capturing and sealing the Nine Tails in the wild when Urashiki tried to steal it from him. Their intense battle caused Karasuki the turtle to activate again. Then, both of them were swallowed by a golden light. When Madara woke up, he was already in this era. He deduced that he might have been pulled into some space-time rift. Looking at the two guards in front of him, he was about to attack, but Naruto suddenly appeared between them. Seeing Naruto arrive, the guards were surprised and relieved. Naruto turned around, smiled, and told them to step back. He would handle things here. Seeing Madara again, Naruto's heart was racing like a stampede. Didn't this guy die during the ninja war? The Madara before him wasn't an Edo Tensei reanimation, but flesh and blood. Naruto tentatively asked, "Are you Uchiha Madara?" Hearing this, Madara smirked wickedly. It seemed not everyone had forgotten him. He asked if Naruto had met him before. Naruto was slightly confused by the question. He covered his face and said helplessly, "Didn't you finally understand what true peace was at the end? Why are you resurrected again? The ninja world is currently at peace, so just rest in peace already." But Madara had no idea what Naruto was talking about. Coming from the Warring States period, he hadn't executed the Eye of the Moon plan yet, and he didn't know Naruto. However, he felt that Naruto's way of speaking was very similar to Hashirama's. He asked Naruto if this was Konoha. Seeing that Madara seemingly remembered nothing, Naruto pondered for a moment and asked what happened before he came here. Madara recounted his battle with Urashiki. Naruto's brow furrowed instantly. According to the intel guard gave him, there was indeed an Otsutsuki with a fishing rod. Could time travel actually be real? Learning that it was now the 80th year of Konoha, Madara confirmed he really time traveled from the 5th year. From Naruto's earlier words, he deduced that his version in this timeline was dead. He turned to ask Naruto what exactly he had done. If Madara came to Boruto, is there anyone in the Boruto era who could stop him? After a brief exchange with Naruto, he finally accepted the fact that he time traveled. He asked Naruto how his future self died. Naruto put away his surprised look and recounted what Madara had done. Simply put, you should have died over 30 years ago. But then you resurrected, and ultimately got backstabbed by a pitch-black guy. Seeing that Naruto didn't have the Sharingan, yet knew about the Eye of the Moon plan and the contents of the Uchiha Stone Tablet, Madara was surprised. He roughly believed Naruto was telling the truth. Learning the tragic outcome of his future ambitions, he recalled his recent conversation with Hashirama in front of the stone tablet. Madara smiled faintly inwardly. Although Hashirama's ideas were naive, entrusting unfulfilled dreams to the next generation might actually be the right path. He asked Naruto what the Otsutsuki were. Naruto could picture them in his head, but not being good with words, he didn't know how to describe them. He told Madara to follow him, and Shikamaru would explain clearly. Looking at Naruto, Madara saw Hashirama's shadow overlapping with him. Along the way, Madara looked at Konoha's current glorious state. He couldn't help but sigh emotionally. The dream he and Hashirama had when founding the village must have looked exactly like this. Shortly after, the two arrived at the outskirts to meet Shikamaru. Shikamaru had been waiting there for a while. He was about to ask Naruto what the emergency mission he mentioned over the radio was, but when he saw the familiar yet terrifying face next to Naruto, he stood completely dumbfounded. He stammered, asking Naruto what was going on. Why was this guy resurrected again? Madara smirked upon hearing this. During the Ninja War, he had experienced Shikamaru's tactical mind. Naruto signaled Shikamaru not to panic. Uncle Madara isn't the same as before. Besides, if anything happens, Shikamaru glanced at Madara from the corner of his eye. Seeing that Madara had no intention of fighting, he finally let his guard down. The next few hours involved a conversation that spanned across centuries. Because it was Shikamaru, he easily accepted the fact of Madara's time travel. Through Shikamaru and Naruto's explanations, Madara learned everything about his past actions and the current ninja world. He crossed his arms and said indifferently, "It seems the current ninja world isn't as peaceful as it looks. That clan is called the Otsutsuki." Shikamaru nodded. According to Sasuke's report a few days ago, when Sasuke was investigating Kaguya's dimensions, he encountered two members of the Otsutsuki clan. It's likely those two will soon invade the ninja world. Hearing this, Madara burst into laughter, thinking of the Otsutsuki who played him for decades and eventually backstabbed him. He was filled with rage. Now that he could personally fight this clan, he swore that this time he would make them pay in blood. Naruto also smiled faintly. "It seems I'll be in your care from now on, Uncle Madara." Fighting alongside the legendary Madara actually gives a strong sense of security. However, Madara knew with his current power, it clearly wasn't enough. Before that, he needed to acquire even greater strength. He stood up and declared that today's conversation was over. He asked Naruto to find him a place to stay and to take him to see the youngest Uchiha brat of this era. Having witnessed his past failures, Madara decided to do what Hashirama did. Try entrusting his dreams to the next generation. And the youngest Uchiha now was Sarada. But she was currently taking the Chunin exams. It wasn't that Naruto didn't want to bring Madara there, but he feared the other cages at the venue would literally faint from terror if they saw Madara suddenly appear. Shikamaru sighed and suggested, "Why don't you just use the transformation jutsu?" Madara looked at Naruto with a disdainful gaze. How did someone like him become Hokage? Shortly after, the three of them arrived at the Chunin exam venue. Madara looked at the matches between the new generation and frowned. What is this? To think Madara actually wanted to take Sarada as his disciple. After Naruto brought the time-traveling Madara to the Chunin exam arena, Madara frowned in disdain at the matches below. He asked Naruto what all this was. Naruto helplessly explained to Madara that, with over 10 years of peace in the ninja world, the number of people willing to be ninjas and take missions was steadily decreasing, causing the overall strength of the new generation of ninjas to be slightly weaker than before. Suddenly, noticed a girl in red with the Uchiha crest on her back. He asked Naruto, "Is this the only Uchiha bloodline that has been passed down?" Upon learning she was Sasuke's daughter, Madara smiled wickedly. He suddenly vanished from his spot, giving Naruto a fright. Without a second thought, Naruto chased after him. Madara's voice echoed in the air. "I'm going to observe that girl up close." Naruto shook his head helplessly, silently complaining. Why did this big shot suddenly have to come here? Approaching closer, Madara watched Sarada's every move. He judged her talent to be average at best. Judging from her movements, that brat Sasuke had been far too negligent in his teaching. Naruto awkwardly explained that Sasuke had only just met his daughter for the first time recently, far away in a certain forest. Sasuke, who was investigating Otsutsuki intel, suddenly couldn't help but sneeze. He gazed towards the direction of Konoha. Having been away for so long, it was time to head back to the village. The matches continued, but Madara had lost the mood to observe further. With a body flicker, he vanished, as if sensing Madara's presence. Sarada turned her gaze to where he had just disappeared. Shortly after, Boruto and his team successfully passed the preliminaries. The ninjas headed home. Naruto suddenly called out to Sarada on her way home. Upon seeing her idol, the 7th Hokage, Sarada's eyes lit up. She was confused. Why would the busy 7th Hokage be here? At this moment, an ordinary-looking man, who was Madara, stepped out from behind Naruto. Naruto told Sarada not to be too shocked by what happens next. As Madara's transformation jutsu dispelled, his imposing figure stood tall before her. Sarada, stunned, was about to ask who he was when she noticed he also possessed the Sharingan. The terrifying aura radiating from it nearly made her collapse. She stammered, asking who this person was and why he had the Sharingan. Naruto scratched the back of his head and introduced him. Simply put, you should call him your ancestor. He is none other than the legendary ancestor of the Uchiha Madara. The intense emotion caused Sarada's eyes to involuntarily activate her single-tomo Sharingan. She expressed her shock. Didn't the history books say Uchiha Madara died a long time ago? Hearing this, Madara appeared calm on the surface, looking at Sarada's Sharingan. He smiled faintly inward. Her potential was decent. If she had been born a few years earlier, she might have been a much more suitable candidate than Obito. He cut straight to the chase and said, I only came to see you for one reason, and that is to ask you if you are willing to become my disciple. Upon hearing this, both Sarada and Naruto were extremely shocked. Who asks someone to be their disciple on their very first meeting? Are all Uchiha men like this two girls? Sarada couldn't help but feel that the man before her was, in some ways, very similar to her dad. Though she didn't know what was going on, she felt that if he wanted to be her teacher, he should at least show her his skills. Upon seeing Madara's eyes and the 7th Hokage inexplicably showing up here, Sarada knew that the person in front of her was very likely Madara indeed. However, if she agreed so easily, it would feel like she was losing her pride as a girl. Hearing this, Madara crossed his arms. He told Sarada to hit him with her strongest attack. If he even moved an inch, he would admit defeat. In the past, even full power punch couldn't make Madara move half a step. So Sarada naturally had no chance, as she threw what she considered her strongest punch, let alone touching Madara. She couldn't even stir up a single grain of sand next to him. Naruto face palms secretly in the background. To think Madara was taking a challenge from a child so seriously. At this moment, on the outskirts of Konoha, a space-time portal suddenly opened. The person stepping out was none other than Sasuke. Can Sasuke in the Boruto era defeat Madara in a 1v1? Just after Madara smoothly became Sarada's master, Sasuke also returned to Konoha. He immediately went to the Hokage's office to find Naruto. Seeing Sasuke back, Naruto was overjoyed. He immediately informed that Sasuke had resurrected again. Hearing this, Sasuke asked Naruto if he had gone crazy from working overtime. He reported to Naruto that the Otsutsuki would arrive in the ninja world very soon, and that he planned to stay in the village for a while. Naruto told Sasuke to set those matters aside for now, as Madara really had appeared again. Learning the reason behind Madara's reappearance and that he had become Sarada's master, Sasuke instantly activated his Mangekyo Sharingan. He asked for Madara's current whereabouts and prepared to rush out. Seeing this, Naruto told Sasuke not to be impulsive. He explained that Madara was different now. This time, Madara will be one of our most capable partners against the Otsutsuki. Sasuke naturally understood this as well. With a great enemy looming, now wasn't the time for infighting among ninjas. But with Madara now acting as Sarada's master, he had to personally confirm that Madara posed no threat. Naruto said no more and watched Sasuke leave. Shikamaru stepped forward, asking if letting Sasuke would lead to any accidents. Naruto smiled faintly. He believed Sasuke could handle it. Meanwhile, Madara was resting on a high point at Konoha's outskirts. He recalled his battle with Otsutsuki Urashiki before coming here. before he was enveloped by that turtle's golden light. He was certain he had seen another pale figure. Who exactly is this clan? It was time to think about his next countermeasures. Suddenly, a kunai flew toward him. Without even looking up, Madara caught the kunai. A contemptuous smirk formed on his lips. As the expected guest finally arrived, Sasuke's cool figure swayed in the wind. A relic of the old era. It really is you. Between top-tier experts, if you want to know the other's true intentions, there's no faster way than fighting. Madara and Sasuke engaged in a fierce taijutsu duel. Sasuke ultimately used Bancho Tenan to pull Madara toward him, then immediately infused his sword of Kusanagi with Amaterasu. Unable to break free, Madara's body was pierced. However, the person pierced was nothing more than Madara's wood clone. The brief scuffle came to a pause. Madara praised Sasuke's movements for being more agile than before. He knew Sasuke's fierce aggression wasn't just to avenge being stabbed in the heart 16 years ago, but also because of Sarada. Sasuke scoffed coldly. The 2 points Madara mentioned were irrelevant now. He knew Sarada wouldn't be in danger, because he had always trusted Naruto's judgment to be correct. Furthermore, during his clash with Madara, he also sensed a change in him. The current Madara lacked his previous malice and bloodlust. The main reason he came here was to discuss the Otsutsuki with Madara, learning that the Otsutsuki Madara encountered were different from the ones he found in Kaguya's dimension. Sasuke couldn't help but frown to think there were so many members of that clan. It seemed a great war would soon fall upon the ninja world. Seeing Sasuke's expression, Madara burst out laughing. That arrogant brat who once didn't know his own limits. Sasuke scoffed coldly, and he hadn't expected that a guy like Madara actually had a side like this. After warning Madara not to let Sarada lose in the Chunin exam finals, he hurriedly left. Having interacted with the current Naruto and Sasuke, Madara couldn't think back to the time when he and Hashirama first founded the village. If he hadn't been deceived by Black Zetsu back then, perhaps things between them would have been like this too. However, thinking about the existence of Togurama, he shook his head. Right now, it was time to start boosting his power. Based on the ninja world intel gathered by the White Zetsus back then, that guy's name was Orochimaru, right? Madara from the Warring States period actually time traveled to Konoha in the Boruto era and obtained memories of his future from Naruto. In order to awaken the Rinnegan, Madara decided to pay a visit to Orochimaru, the one who researched the most thoroughly. With Naruto's introduction, Madara successfully found him. Upon learning the whole story, Orochimaru was extremely excited. He never expected that in his lifetime, he would be able to interact with such a legendary figure. Madara got straight to the point regarding the Rinnegan. Since you've looked into the profound truths of the universe, you should know well, Orochimaru right? Nodded, of course. When the chakras of Indra and Ashura combine, it is possible to awaken the Rinnegan. That being said, what puzzled Madara now was that the exact time of awakening couldn't be determined. In the past, after implanting Hashirama's cells, he didn't awaken the Rinnegan until he was near death in his old age. Now, with a formidable enemy approaching, he didn't have that much time to wait. Regarding this, Orochimaru had his theory. Sasuke previously awakened his eye after receiving Hashirama's cells when he was near death, and Madara also awakened it when he was about to die. Therefore, he deduced that being near death might be a necessary condition to awaken the Rinnegan. Hearing this, Madara recalled his later years. He confirmed that the situation might be exactly as Orochimaru said. Being near death could indeed accelerate the fusion of Indra and Ashura's powers. Right now, no matter what, he needed to implant Hashirama's cells first. Being able to personally operate on the legendary Uchiha Madara, Orochimaru was more than eager. He brought out the most refined Hashirama cells he had extracted over the years, and simultaneously warned Madara that implanting Hashirama's cells carried great risks. He asked Madara if he was ready. Madara told Orochimaru to stop talking nonsense and start. A few hours later, the surgery was a complete success. Feeling Hashirama's power surging continuously within his body, Madara smiled faintly. This power is not bad. Let's test it outside. The few of them went outside. Madara clasped his hands and cast deep forest emergence. A vast forest of trees rolled forward. Madara grew even stronger. After listening to Madara's explanation, she began practicing the jutsu. Madara, on the other hand, went deep into the forest alone. Ever since time traveling, there was something he wanted to confirm. He formed hand signs and cast the summoning jutsu. As he expected, the Ninetales figure abruptly appeared. The Ninetales he had subdued in his own timeline had indeed traveled through time with him. The Ninetales glared at Madara and was about to attack, but with a glare from Madara's eyes, it froze in place. Madara said coldly, "Although I don't know why we came here, I'll need you to continue obeying me." After speaking, he extracted a portion of Yam Chakra from the Ninetales and returned to Sarada's side, sealing that portion of chakra into her body. Sarada instantly lost consciousness, but her body didn't fall. Instead, surrounded by a surge of Ninetales chakra, she floated in the air. This was Madara's gift to her as her master. To think Madara actually used Genjutsu on Boruto, just after Sarada received the Ninetales from chakra. Madara. Boruto, who happened to be passing by, jumped out. Looking at the unconscious Sarada next to Madara, he drew a kunai and demanded to know who Madara was. Madara glanced at Boruto. So this is Naruto's son. Weak in strength, but commendable in courage. Suddenly, Mitsuki used a white snake from behind Madara to snatch Sarada off the ground. Seeing that Mitsuki had mastered Sage Mode at such a young age, Madara praised him as being somewhat decent. Seeing Sarada rescued, Boruto created several shadow clones and launched a coordinated attack, but Madara didn't even react to him. Boruto's attacks were as flimsy as paper. He caught the real Boruto's hand with one hand and tossed him aside. Boruto did a backflip in midair, about to unleash a thunderclap arrow jutsu, but suddenly noticed Sarada had woken up. Sarada told Boruto to stop immediately. The person in front of them was her master. Hearing this, Boruto was dumbfounded. This was the first time he had heard that Sarada had a master. Upon learning that the person in front of them was actually the legendary Uchiha Madara, Boruto was initially shocked, then shook his head, saying that someone who was defeated by his useless old man was nothing to be afraid of. Normally, Madara wouldn't bicker with a child, but today he was struck by a whim to teach Naruto's son a lesson. He snapped his Sharingan open and cast a Genjutsu on Boruto. In an instant, Boruto found himself in an ethereal, empty world. The next second, mountains of corpses appeared before his eyes. This was the exact scene of the previous Ninja World Wars. Hearing the wailing and desperate cries all around him, Boruto, standing in the midst of it all, couldn't stop trembling. Flames danced in the sky, and tens of thousands of ninjas fell, completely powerless to resist. The immense shock pushed Boruto's mental endurance to its breaking point. He dropped to his knees and dry heaved. Madara slowly walked up to him and said with disdain, "Well, now that you've witnessed war with your own eyes, how do you feel?" Faced with Madara's questioning, Boruto didn't answer him. He just kept his head down, trembling as he muttered, "Why are you showing me this?" Madara didn't like educating children, but for a child who complained about hard-won peace, he had to make him understand what a fortunate era he was living in. After all, in his era, some of his little brothers were sent to the battlefield before they were even a meter tall. As the surrounding scenes dissipated, Boruto and Madara returned to the initial void. Madara said solemnly to Boruto, "It's exactly because of the useless old man in your eyes that the ninja was finally saved from an evil villain like me. Being able to live in such a happy era. Shouldn't you be thanking your father?" Boruto wiped the tears from his face. When he opened his eyes again, there seemed to be a hint of newfound maturity in them. He stated that he understood, and if all of this was true, he would definitely use his own methods to become an existence even stronger than his father. Madara glared. Releasing the Genjutsu, Boruto instinctively crouched down, panting heavily, looking at Madara's retreating back. A slight smile curved on his lips. This was the first time someone had ever told him about his dad's past. Shortly after, Madara went alone to the former Valley of the End. Here, he would always remember his final battle with Hashirama. The endlessly flowing river at the foot of the mountains seemed as if it was narrating that battles between ninjas would never truly cease. But right now, this tranquil and fleeting era didn't seem so bad. Wouldn't you agree, Hashirama? At this time, the Hidden Cloud Village welcomed 3 uninvited extraterrestrial guests. In his battle with Momoshiki, Killer Bee was quickly defeated. After successfully absorbing the 8 Tails chakra, Momoshiki gazed towards the direction of Konoha. The chakra fluctuation caused by Madara summoning the 9 Tails earlier not only caught Naruto's attention, but also exposed Madara's summoning location to Momoshiki. Soon, Momoshiki and Kinshiki came knocking. The Madara who traveled to the Boruto era is finally going to battle Momoshiki. Right after Madara taught Boruto a lesson, he suddenly arrived where Naruto and the other cages were holding a meeting. Seeing Madara's face, everyone shuddered in fear. Before Naruto could even explain, several cages had instinctively launched long-range ninjutsu attacks at him. Instantly, flames erupted, but everywhere. When the smoke cleared, Madara was seen standing completely unharmed with his Susanoo activated. After Naruto helplessly asked everyone to calm down, why Madara was here? Madara glanced over the current cages present and scoffed contemptuously. These days, just about anyone can become a cage. If Naruto's shadow clone hadn't repeatedly begged me to come, I wouldn't have even bothered. And the reason Naruto asked Madara to come was precisely because Gaara, on his way, had once encountered a pale man carrying a fishing rod. After hearing Gaara's descriptions, Madara confirmed that the person was indeed Otsutsuki Urashiki, the one he fought before. Although he's a clown, some of his abilities are quite troublesome. Hearing that the Otsutsuki had appeared in the ninja world again, everyone was terrified. Naruto immediately added that yesterday he suddenly lost his connection to the 8 Tails. It's likely that Killer Bee had already been attacked by that clan. Their next target should be to come here to capture the 9 Tails. He told everyone to be ready for battle at any moment. The next morning, Konoha welcomed the long-awaited Chunin exam finals. This time, Boruto didn't bring any scientific ninja tools to cheat, but his face was full of confidence. On the other hand, Sarada looked heavily burdened because of the 9 Tails chakra in her body. She constantly worried that she wouldn't be able to properly control this power. Mitsuki watched the silent Sarada from the side. His sage mode had long since detected the 9 Tails chakra inside her. Meanwhile, in the spectator stand, Sasuke and Madara were on the verge of fighting over the 9 Tails issue concerning Sarada. Sasuke scolded Madara for actually putting such a dangerous position. Possessing 9 Tails chakra, she would inevitably become an Otsutsuki target. Hearing this, Madara crossed his arms, completely unbothered. Sasuke, saying he really didn't understand his own daughter at all. That girl was not someone who would give up easily. Also present and surprised was Naruto. He never thought that Madara would care so much about Sarada. All things considered, this wasn't necessarily a bad thing for her. In the arena, the 3 finalists were Boruto, Sarada, and Gaara's son, Shinki. The rules were a 3-way battle royale, and the last one standing would become a Chunin. At the start, Sarada and Boruto simultaneously launched a joint attack on Shinki. Shinki controlled his iron sand to counterattack. Being absolutely confident in his strength, he looked down on the 2 of them. After a series of offensive and defensive, Shinki gradually gained the upper hand. He flapped the black wings behind him and suddenly shot a massive amount of iron sand projectiles just as Boruto was about to be turned into a pincushion. A massive amount of red chakra suddenly surged from Sarada's body. With a fierce shout, she shattered the incoming iron sand projectiles, scattering them on the ground. Naruto's eyes lit up upon seeing this. He couldn't be more familiar with this chakra. Seeing Sarada enter the one-tail chakra cloak state, it was as if he was looking at his younger self. Shinki was startled by this. Continuing to drag this out would likely be disadvantageous. He violently spread his wings, transformed them into a giant drill, and launched an attack. Seeing this, Sarada not only didn't dodge, but began forming hand signs. Boruto, standing nearby, was stunned by her sudden surge as her hand signs finished. Fire style, Majestic Destroyer Flame was unleashed. A massive wave of flames rushed towards Shinki in the arena. Shinki's magnet-style attack instantly collapsed. Seeing this from the spectator stands, Madara revealed a satisfied smile. Shinki ultimately had to retreat out of bounds to dodge the flames. The victorious Sarada, due to excessive chakra usage, fainted. Naruto stood up, preparing to go down and announce the results. But a white figure suddenly snatched Sarada off the ground. Accompanying this was an overwhelming sense of malice. The intruders were Momoshiki and Kinshiki. Madara is finally joining Naruto to fight the Otsutsuki. Just as the Chunin exams concluded, Naruto suddenly sensed a strong feeling of malice. The intruders were the Otsutsuki who came to capture the Nine Tails, Momoshiki and Kinshiki. At this moment, beside the unconscious Sarada, a space-time portal suddenly opened. The moment the spatial fluctuation, Sasuke turned around sharply, but it was too late. In an instant, Sarada was dragged into the portal by a pale hand. Sasuke was furious. He interrogated Momoshiki, demanding to know where they took Sarada. Momoshiki contemptuously glanced at Sasuke and the others, then ordered Kinshiki to clear away the lower life forms below. With a loud crash, Sasuke and Naruto instinctively stepped back. Naruto also grabbed Boruto and threw him to Kakashi in the stance. He entrusted Kakashi to protect Boruto. At this moment, Kinshiki unleashed an earth-shattering The entire Chunin arena instantly crumbled. Fortunately, ninjas from all over stepped in and safely evacuated the crowd. Sarada's sudden disappearance made the usually calm Sasuke extremely anxious. He charged at Kinshiki alone. The two engaged in a fierce taijutsu battle. Seeing this, Naruto stepped in and told Sasuke to calm down. He told Sasuke that Madara had been missing since earlier. He must have gone after the guy who took Sarada. Leave Sarada's situation to Madara. Naruto knew very well that these two were not enemies they could easily defeat. Fighting them in the village restricted their movements. They had to lure them outside the village. Hearing Naruto's words, Sasuke calmed down a bit. He explained to Naruto that these two were the ones he encountered in Kaguya's dimension. Suddenly, a fierce kick from Momoshiki sent Sasuke flying. Seeing this, Naruto immediately formed a Rasengan and slammed it towards Momoshiki. But Momoshiki had no intention of dodging. He raised his hand and, using the Rinnegan on his palm, absorbed the incoming Rasengan. Then, with a wicked smile, he said, "Pitiful lower life form, I'll return this to you." In the next second, an incredibly massive Rasengan formed in Momoshiki's other hand. Seeing things go south, immediately went into partial Ninetales mode to defend. He was deeply surprised. Not only could he absorb ninjutsu, but he could also instantly return it amplified several times over. What a terrifying monster! Meanwhile, on the outskirts of Konoha, Sarada lay unconscious on the ground. Standing beside her was none other than Otsutsuki Yorishiki, who had taken her from the arena. He never imagined there would actually be two Ninetales. Right now, Momoshiki and Kinshiki were being stalled by Konoha's ninjas. Yorishiki planned in his heart to silently revive the Ten Tails before Momoshiki could. Suddenly, a contemptuous voice rang out behind him. "Just as I expected. It really is you, clown?" Madara had finally tracked him down using the Ninetales chakra on Sarada. Seeing Madara's face, Yorishiki's eyes went wide. He hadn't expected Madara to also be dragged into this timeline, but he quickly hid his panic. He hoisted Sarada off the ground and held her in front of him as a shield. Then warned Madara that if he wanted this girl to die, he should go ahead and attack. With no other choice, Madara remained motionless. A long-lost killing intent filled his eyes. Yorishiki smirked, using his Rinnegan to open a space-time portal. He then immediately fled with Sarada. Since Madara didn't have space-time ninjutsu yet, he could only watch helplessly as Sarada was taken away. In the arena, Momoshiki sensed Yuroshiki's movements to prevent Yuroshiki from getting to the Ninetales on Sarada. Before him, he ordered Kinshiki to temporarily retreat. Before leaving, he unleashed the tailed beast bomb he had absorbed from Killer Bee. As a parting gift, the tailed beast bomb, amplified by Takami Musubanokimi, became unimaginably massive. By the time Naruto and Sasuke combined forces to stop the tailed beast bomb, Momoshiki and Kinshiki had already left through a space-time portal. The crisis of war in the village was temporarily resolved. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief. He asked everyone to head to the Hokage's office to discuss a plan to rescue Sarada. To think Madara actually defeated Yuroshiki all by himself. Right after Momoshiki left the ninja world, Naruto immediately gathered Madara and the others to discuss a plan to rescue Sarada, based on a scroll he had obtained from Kaguya's dimension earlier. Sasuke found the spatial coordinates where Momoshiki likely fled. Without delay, they decided to set off in an alternate dimension, Momoshiki, who had taken Sarada. Since Momoshiki was technically his senior, Yuroshiki didn't dare complain and handed Sarada over to him. Sensing the Ninetales inside Sarada, a greedy look instantly appeared on Momoshiki's face. He decided to drain the Ninetales chakra in front of him first. So he tied Sarada to the divine tree and began absorbing the chakra, but an invisible chakra barrier blocked his absorption. This was exactly the sealing jutsu Madara had placed on Sarada. A frustrated Momoshiki preparing to forcefully break the seal. Far away in Konoha, Madara immediately sensed it. He told Sasuke to hurry up. The seal on Sarada was starting to loosen. Although Madara's voice sounded calm, his chilling, murderous gaze was enough to make one shudder. Sasuke opened a space-time portal without another word. Before they left, Boruto suddenly appeared, asking to be taken along. Sensing Boruto's resolve, Naruto finally agreed to his request. Above Momoshiki's head, a space-time rift suddenly appeared. Sasuke's group quickly emerged from the rift. With their tacit coordination, they successfully rescued Sarada from the tree. Gritting his teeth, Momoshiki glared at Sasuke's Rinnegan. He could sense Kaguya's power within it. Suddenly, Naruto appeared above Momoshiki and launched an attack. Seeing this, immediately blocked the attack with his body. Consequently, he was sent flying back, smashing into the divine tree. He couldn't believe it, because Naruto's speed and power were completely different from when they fought in Konoha. Just as he was about to return to protect Momoshiki, the other four Kages had already surrounded him. Boruto took the opportunity to take the unconscious Sarada and hide further away. Yuroshiki, seeing the opposing side was serious, prepared to slip away quietly, but Madara's sword was already slashing down at him. He had no choice but to use his visual body into paper cranes to dodge. Madara told him not to be in such a hurry to leave. Let's settle the score for what you did to my disciple. After speaking, he activated the Uchiha flame trapping himself and Yuroshiki inside. Then he immediately formed seals and cast deep forest bloom. Vines burst from the ground, constantly grabbing at Yuroshiki. Relying on his time-rewinding ability, Yuroshiki breezed through this barrage of attacks as easily as a spring breeze. The wood-style vines couldn't even touch a single hair on his body. But Madara had no intention of stopping his attacks. He continuously spurred the growth of the forest. As the flowers bloomed, poisonous pollen was constantly released. Within the sealed barrier, under the relentless assault, Yuroshiki could only continuously rewind his time to dodge. Finding an opening, he instantly launched Heavenly Might Wave. Meteor, countless glowing red fishhooks shot towards Madara. But the fishhooks were completely blocked by the wood-style vines. Shortly after, Yuroshiki suddenly fell to his knees, coughing up mouthfuls of blood. Because he kept rewinding his own time, the amount of poisonous pollen he inhaled was exponentially multiplied. Seeing his plan succeed, Madara smirked contemptuously. During his last encounter with Yuroshiki, he had already discovered the specific traits of his ability. A Susanoo sword suddenly erupted from the ground and impaled Yuroshiki. This was a Susanoo from Madara's wood clone. Using this clone to keep Yuroshiki pinned down, His true body deactivated the flame formation and headed to the battlefield with Naruto and Momoshiki. At this time, Momoshiki launched Inukai Takeru no Mikoto at Naruto and Stone Dragon heads rose from the ground instantly. Sasuke activated a partial Susanoo, continuously slashing at the rushing dragon heads. Momoshiki maintained a frantic offensive, and Sasuke's defense was gradually failing to keep up. In desperation, Naruto used a chakra arm from behind to grab Momoshiki. Then, a lightning-fast, fierce punch struck directly at his face. The massive impact sent Momoshiki flying backward for hundreds of meters. Madara actually stole the chakra fruit Kinshiki turned into. At this moment, Naruto and Sasuke were together suppressing Momoshiki in his initial form. Gritted his teeth and looked at Kinshiki, who was already subdued by the other four cages. Kinshiki yelled at him that the time to devour his chakra had arrived. After a moment of hesitation, reached out and absorbed Kinshiki. During the flight, Kinshiki gradually transformed into a chakra fruit. But before Momoshiki could catch it, a figure suddenly darted out quickly and snatched the fruit. Momoshiki instantly flew into a rage, screaming, "Who is it?" And the person who stole the fruit was none other than Madara, who came to assist. Madara tossed the chakra fruit that Kinshiki had turned into in his hand. Remarked indifferently, "The Otsutsuki really are a bunch of monsters. You actually have a method where comrades eat each other." This time, Madara thoroughly enraged Momoshiki. Momoshiki swore he would definitely make Madara pay the price. He pulled out all the chakra pills he had obtained in the past and swallowed them. In the next second, his chakra surged exponentially. He immediately unleashed a fire bird to hold off Naruto and Sasuke, while his main body flew towards Madara at extreme speed. It was so fast that Madara could hardly counterattack. He could only activate a partial Susanoo for defense, but Momoshiki's full power punch easily destroyed his Susanoo. Under the massive impact, Madara was sent flying backward, the chakra fruit in his hand. Madara caressed his eyes and smiled confidently. This should make things a bit more interesting. To think Momoshiki actually planted a karma mark on Madara. At this time, to block the Raisin Shuriken, Madara finally awakened the Rinnegan. Momoshiki glared fiercely at Madara with his Byakugan. He grinned and said that the fate Madara carried was very interesting. An invisible attack fiercely sent Momoshiki flying. This was exactly Madara's Rinnegan ability, Limbo Border Jail. Before Momoshiki could catch his breath, Madara and his Limbo clone simultaneously activated and launched a pincer attack, slashing their Susanoo swords at him at once. But Momoshiki, with blinding speed, slipped through the gap between the sword strikes. Madara was such a high-density attack, and the opponent could actually dodge it so easily. Momoshiki arrogantly declared that any attack in front of his eyes was completely useless. After saying that, he immediately raised his hand and launched Inukai Countless monsters with dragon heads and snake bodies burst from the ground. Madara and his Limbo clone could only continuously swing their Susanoo to intercept them. Seeing this, Momoshiki launched Takami Musubu no Kimi at Naruto and Sasuke, who were charging at him. Countless red weapons instantly swept across the field. Facing this terrifying army of weapons, Naruto and Sasuke together activated the majestic attire, Susanoo on Kurama. But even with Susanoo's defense in front of these special weapons, it soon became battered and ruined. Seeing that he had suppressed them, Momoshiki immediately pressed his advantage. He unleashed the fire bird. The bird's flames completely shattered the Ninetales' head. At this time, Madara's Susanoo sword suddenly descended from the sky, cleaving the fire bird in two. But in the next instant, the scattered flames reformed into a new fire bird. Taking advantage of Madara stalling the fire bird's advance, Naruto and Sasuke immediately launched a pincer attack from both the left and right sides towards Momoshiki. After a fierce taijutsu exchange among the three, Sasuke gathered Chidori in his hand, while Naruto held a magnet-style Rasengan. Then, the two charged at each other. At the moment of contact, Sasuke used Amida Chikara, swapping the air in front of them with Momoshiki's position. But just an instant before the attacks hit Momoshiki, Momoshiki suddenly grabbed both of their arms with pinpoint precision. He contemptuously stated that no matter how many times they tried, fall for Such lower life form tricks. With that, he violently spun around, throwing Sasuke and Naruto in different directions. But what Momoshiki didn't expect was that several chains suddenly burst from the ground. Sasuke and Naruto each tightly held onto one end of the chains, firmly entangling Momoshiki. This was the true purpose of their attack. Naruto shouted, Madara. Now Madara was already prepared. From the beginning, he had summoned the Ninetales and equipped it with majestic attire. A supermassive tailed beast bomb was forming in the Ninetales' mouth. Madara positioned the divine Susanoo sword horizontally inside the tailed beast bomb, then charged wildly toward Momoshiki. Momoshiki struggled and finally broke free from the chains. He raised his left hand, ready to absorb the incoming tailed beast bomb. But Sasuke suddenly used Minato Chikara to swap places with the air in front of Momoshiki. Then he immediately used a kunai to pierce the Rinnegan on Momoshiki's hand. While Momoshiki was stunned, Madara's majestic attire Ninetales had already closed in. Momoshiki had no choice but to hastily form a red chakra sphere in his hand to meet the attack. Seeing this, Naruto leapt to Madara's side and transferred his own Ninetales chakra to Madara. With Naruto's help, the tailed beast bomb continued to expand. After a clash of energies, Momoshiki's chakra sphere ultimately couldn't withstand Madara's majestic attire tailed beast bomb. His entire body was engulfed in it, blowing him into countless space. Shortly after, Madara suddenly found himself in a void-like space. Before his eyes was the Momoshiki who had just been defeated. Looking into Madara's cold and arrogant Momoshiki sneered, telling Madara to mentally prepare himself. Those who defeat a god can no longer remain ordinary mortals. One day, he would completely destroy everything Madara cherished. After saying that, Momoshiki began to laugh heartily. Madara sliced Momoshiki's phantom into two. He snorted coldly, stating that he was never an ordinary mortal to begin with. As time continued to flow, Madara returned to his own consciousness. At this time, a black, diamond-shaped mark appeared on his hand. This was the karma mark Momoshiki had planted on him. Naruto is finally starting to develop a new jutsu. At this moment, Naruto and the others finally defeated Momoshiki together. But Momoshiki left a karma mark on Madara. Madara looked at Naruto and Sasuke, shook his head, and sternly criticized them. You've been slacking in your training in recent years, compared to your strength during the Ninja War 16 years ago. You've actually regressed. Naruto scratched his head awkwardly. He couldn't refute Madara's criticism, but at the same time, a long-lost passion was surging within him. It was time to start training seriously again. Looking at the karma mark on his hand, Madara lamented that no era is ever truly free from conflict. Due to the intense battle earlier, the wit clone he left to hold Urashiki disappeared. Urashiki took the opportunity to slip away, although his whereabouts were unknown. However, it's certain he won't dare to cause trouble again in the short term. The Momoshiki incident had come to a temporary close. Everyone returned to Konoha together. After fighting side by side this time, Madara was completely accepted by the Kages of the other villages. After saying goodbye to Naruto, the quickly returned to their respective villages. In the dead of night, Madara lay alone on his bed, looking at the mark on his hand deep in thought. He didn't understand what the thing on his hand was. What did the words Momoshiki said before disappearing mean? Soon after, he mocked himself for really getting old, actually worrying about the threats of a weakling. Drowsy with sleep, he thought of Hashirama again. If that guy were here, what would he do? Meanwhile, in the Hidden Rain Village's Kiro organization base, Jigen sensed Momoshiki's demise, and a smirk crept onto his face. He remarked dismissively, "Things are getting more and more interesting. It's time for Kara's plan to be put into motion." After speaking, he looked at Kawaki, who was undergoing rigorous training. He secretly rejoiced in his heart. As long as he obtained Kawaki's body, the day he took revenge on Kaguya and became the god of the Otsutsuki would not be far off. A few days later, the investigation team sent out by each village failed to find any trace of Otsutsuki. Urashiki. Naruto used a video call to hold a temporary 5-cage summit. The Otsutsuki's goal is to collect the tailed beast, the 10 to revive, thereby cultivating the chakra fruit. Therefore, securing the safety of the tailed beasts is the most critical task ahead. Each village reported their situation. Darui stated that ever since Killer Bee was attacked last time, the village had been taking 24-hour shifts to guard him and guarantee his safety. As for Shukaku, although he is no longer bound to a Jinchuriki, stays by Gar's side in a shrunken form. Naruto, on the other hand, ensured the safety of Sarada and himself at the same time through the mental realm and his connection with all the tailed beasts. He warned the other free-roaming tailed beasts to be wary of Otsutsuki attacks with everything properly arranged. Naruto concluded this 5K summit. Now it was time to train himself properly. He went alone to the outskirts of Konoha, formed hand signs, and cast Earth Style. Earth Flow Rampart. A large mountain instantly rose from the ground. Naruto immediately followed up with Wood Style to build a simple platform. Having received a Hashirama Cell prosthetic arm, he could naturally use Wood Style with currently ease. He only knew some beginner-level Wood Style jutsu, so he usually never bothered to use them. Now with a great enemy looming, he had to start thinking about how to make himself even stronger for the coming days. He would develop a new jutsu here. On the other side, Sasuke found Madara, who was training Sarada. Without letting Sarada notice, Sasuke called Madara aside to a hidden spot that he would be setting off on a journey alone again. He left Sarada in Madara's care for the time being. Madara didn't try to stop him, but asked if he really wasn't going to tell his daughter. Sasuke shook his head, saying he'd rather not disturb her. After delivering his message, he turned and vanished into the forest. From now on, he too would seek to become stronger in his own way. Madara smirked wickedly. They were all idiots, just like Hashirama. In the distance, suddenly Sarada had tears flowing from the corners of her eyes. Having gradually mastered the power of the Nine Tails, she had long sensed her father's arrival. She swore that the next time she met her father, she would definitely be as strong as the 7th Hokage. To think Urashiki actually wants to resurrect Otsutsuki Kaguya, just as Naruto and Sasuke started their new training. Madara called Sarada and Boruto to the outskirts at the same time. After this period of training, Sarada's overall strength was already approaching Jonin level. Madara's advice for her was to work hard to increase her chakra reserves. Only then could she better control the Nine Tails chakra within her. As for Boruto, Madara's assessment of him was that he was much sharper than his old man. But in terms of chakra, he was pitifully lacking. However, back when they defeated Momoshiki, Madara noticed that Boruto's left eye had actually turned into a deep, azure blue pupil. He was certain that in all his years of living, he had never seen an eye like that. But in that moment, the peculiar aura Boruto exuded gave him a sense of deja vu. To uncover the truth, he decided to also personally instruct Boruto, putting away his thoughts. Madara materialized a long sword out of thin air and tossed it to Boruto to start his training with Kenjutsu sword techniques. Hearing this, Boruto initially wanted to refuse, thinking that his idol Sasuke also wielded a sword. He nodded without further hesitation. After making the arrangements, Madara formed hand signs and created to train Sarada and Boruto. He himself silently leapt onto a tree and began resting. That night, the skies above Konoha welcomed an uninvited guest once again. Otsutsuki Urashiki. Using space-time ninjutsu, Urashiki easily bypassed Konoha's barrier. He headed toward the archive room, where Konoha's intelligence scrolls were kept. His goal was to find the scroll Sasuke had retrieved from Kaguya's dimension. That scroll contained the spatial coordinates of Kaguya's 6 dimensions. With it, Urashiki could use his Rinnegan's space-time abilities to travel to the Genesis dimension where Kaguya was sealed. His repeated defeats at the hands of Madara, coupled with Momoshiki's failure, made him clearly realize that collecting the tail beasts alone was impossible. In order to complete the clan's mission, he decided to take the risk of unsealing Otsutsuki Kaguya. Soon, Urashiki found Kaguya's scroll in the archive room. Smiling wickedly, he vanished into a space-time portal. In the dead of night, Boruto recalled his training from the day. He sighed inwardly, as expected of the legendary Uchiha Madara, although his words were harsh. Under his guidance, Boruto's strength had taken a qualitative leap in just one day. Suddenly, an unfamiliar voice rang out from within Boruto. His left eye simultaneously transformed into its Jogan state. The abrupt voice echoed in the air, saying, "As the one chosen by me, are you getting complacent with just a little bit of power?" Boruto was startled. Standing right in front of him was an eyeless man. The man looked similar to an Otsutsuki. Boruto desperately demanded to know who he was. But the scene before him suddenly shifted. He instantly found himself amidst a vast ocean. The next second, he woke up with a start. Sitting up in bed, he touched his left eye, panting heavily. It was just a dream. Naruto was awakened by Boruto's commotion and hurried over to ask what happened. Boruto didn't speak. He just hugged Naruto, crying. The Jogan in his left eye finally slowly reverted to normal. The next morning, a space-time portal broke the tranquility of Kaguya's Genesis dimension. Slowly floating out from the portal was Otsutsuki Urashiki. To think Kaguya, who was sealed by Naruto, was actually resurrected again. At this time, Urashiki finally located Kaguya's Genesis dimension. The six paths Chubaku Tensei sealing Kaguya hung high in the sky. Urashiki smirked as he flew up to the planetary body for members of the Otsutsuki clan's main branch. Undoing the seal of this Chubaku Tensei wasn't too difficult. He placed his hands on the surface of the sphere and activated the hand signs to dispel Chubaku Tensei. The planetary body instantly began to crumble. Shortly after, Kaguya's figure broke free from inside and drifted down. Along with her was a pitch-black blob. That was none other than Black Zetsu, who had been sealed alongside Kaguya. Black Zetsu couldn't believe that he and his mother would actually see the light of day again. When he saw Urashiki, he immediately hid into Kaguya's sleeve. Kaguya carefully observed Urashiki with her Byakugan, then stated coldly, "So it's you." She immediately assumed a combat stance. Seeing this, Urashiki smiled wickedly that he wasn't here to capture Kaguya, but to seek an alliance with her. Kaguya initially wanted to refuse outright, but Black Zetsu in her sleeve advised her to wait. Right now, although Kaguya was unsealed, having lost the power of the tailed beasts, her strength was greatly diminished. Black Zetsu suggested Kaguya hear out his proposal before making a decision. After learning about the current state of the ninja world from Urashiki, Black Zetsu secretly rejoiced. Because most of the tailed beasts currently didn't have Jinchuriki, collecting them would be much easier than 16 years ago. But when he heard the name Uchiha Madara, he instantly trembled with fear. He bluntly asked Urashiki why that guy was still around. Urashiki briefly explained the reason. Right now in the ninja world, the most troublesome opponent could be said to be that guy. The primary reason he unsealed Kaguya was one of his main goals, which was to use Kaguya to deal with Madara. And what Urashiki could do for Kaguya was help her collect the tailed beast to restore her power. The condition was that after it was done, the 10 tails, she would hand Madara over to him. Kaguya had always been more wary of Momoshiki. As for someone like Urashiki, she didn't really see him as a threat. However, since she was already unsealed now, in order to deal with other clan members that might be sent over, her top priority was to collect the tailed beasts to restore her power. Thus, she agreed to Urashiki's proposed alliance. In the Land of Fire, an unidentified airship suddenly crashed not far from where Boruto and the others were training. Was exactly the airship Kawaki, used to escape from the Kara organization. The massive impact caught Madara's attention. He told Boruto and Sarada to pause their training. The three of them headed over to the airship to investigate. But the inside of the airship was completely empty. Madara kept having an ominous feeling. At this moment, he noticed that in a corner of the airship, there was a scroll containing the coordinates of Ishiki's dimension. A slight smile formed on Madara's lips. He put the scroll away and simultaneously told Boruto being completely unscathed. Because had never seen Madara's true form during the ninja war. His first reaction upon seeing Susanoo was that it was Sasuke, but as a sensory ninja, he quickly realized something was wrong. Madara mockingly asked, Do you
Realizing
something was off, as John nearly dropped
he
in
yelled,
shock. Impossible, and continued to fire frantically. Suddenly, a Susanoo blade erupted from the ground and pierced through his cybernetically modified limbs. Madara mockingly stated that since he had abandoned his identity as a ninja, he shouldn't come out to embarrass himself. After saying that, preparing to use his Sharingan to extract intel about the airship. But at this moment, the next second, dozens of mirror drones simultaneously launched an attack on Boruto and the others behind Madara. The scene instantly looked like Star Wars, with lasers shooting everywhere. Ash shouted that he was now a new human with no ninja stuff anymore. But his tricks were a total joke to Madara and the others. Leapt into the air, infused lightning style into her kunai, and threw them all at once. She accurately shot down all the drones. Suddenly, Ao's body was sent flying backward. What hit him was Boruto's vanishing Rasengan. Boruto walked up to Ao and sternly said, "Now that you're not even a ninja, you can't beat us." Madara surmised that Ao's appearance must be related to the airship earlier. He told to take Boruto the unconscious Ao back to Konoha's interrogation room. But a toad suddenly burst from the ground, swallowed Ao, and immediately vanished in a puff. After a brief moment of surprise, a smirk formed on Madara's lips. To think someone could snatch a person right from under my nose. It seems the enemy has someone quite skilled who was hiding in the distance. He originally wanted to make a grand entrance, but didn't expect such a legendary figure to be present. However, he didn't plan on reporting his goal was also to defeat Jigen. After a brief rest, Madara and the others suddenly discovered an unconscious boy not far from the airship. Judging from the battle marks scattered around, this boy must have just fought those puppets earlier. At this time, Madara noticed that on the boy's hand, there was also a diamond-shaped karma mark. A sudden sharp pain came from Madara's palm. The unconscious Kawaki, due to the karma resonance, experienced a massive surge of energy. As the smoke cleared, he scanned Madara's group and coldly demanded to know if they were pursuers from Kara. Hearing Kara, Madara's eyes lit up. It seemed this kid knew something. He gestured for Boruto to go and subdue him to take back to Konoha. After a fierce duel, Boruto gradually gained the upper hand, but when Kawaki activated his karma state, now, he yelled at Madara to get out of his way and attack with his modified body parts. The fierce explosion kicked up a huge cloud when the smoke cleared, Madara was seen standing completely unscathed with his Susanoo activated. As Susanoo further evolved, Kawaki was utterly shocked by the power before him. The intense pressure even made him feel that Madara might be stronger than Jigen. He knew escaping from this person was impossible. Seeing that Kawaki had given up on running, Madara deactivated his Susanoo and took Kawaki back towards Konoha. Watching from afar, Kashin Koji couldn't help but break into a cold sweat. Konoha ninja. For some reason, an inexplicable sense of familiarity from Konoha. Things were really getting more and more interesting. Madara actually wanted to steal Jigen's right after Madara brought Kawaki back to Konoha. Naruto immediately convened an emergency meeting. They learned of a new faction in the ninja world was a man named Jigen. But Madara wasn't very interested in this. What the mark on his hand was about. Kawaki didn't want to answer, as he couldn't completely trust these people. Couldn't stand Naruto's way of doing things. Ignoring Naruto's protest, he directly stepped forward and used the human path to read Kawaki's memories. Madara instantly knew everything about Kawaki's background, Kara's inners and outers, karma, and the intel on Jigen. Regarding Jigen, Madara guessed that he was likely an Otsutsuki even more troublesome than Momoshiki. Hearing this, everyone present broke into a cold sweat. Using his Sharingan, Madara shared the memories he obtained from Kawaki with Naruto. Was deeply shocked. At the same time, he couldn't help but think of his own childhood experiences. Now that Kawaki was missing, Kara would surely start acting frantically. Madara advised Naruto that it was best not to keep a hot potato like Kawaki in Konoha. But Naruto insisted on keeping Kawaki by his side because he was the enemy's most important just let him go. Hearing this, Madara snorted coldly. You really are an idiot, just like Hashirama. He knew this was just an excuse Naruto made up to protect Kawaki. After parting ways with Naruto, he went to the outskirts of Konoha and took out the scroll he had obtained from the airship. The coordinates recorded on the scroll pointed exactly to the alternate dimension where Sasuke had discovered Otsutsuki's secrets. Upon opening a space-time portal and arriving there, what greeted his eyes was a high platform adjacent to a wall. Carved along the wall were pairs of horn-like totems. Madara quickly analyzed the features of the patterns, which perfectly corresponded to the horns of the Otsutsuki. As holograms of the Otsutsuki appeared one by one, Madara verified his inner thoughts. When he saw Kaguya, he couldn't help but stare for a moment. So this is the Kaguya who played me for most of my life. Next, he touched Ishiki's totem. The next second, the hologram of Otsutsuki based on the arrangement of the previous totems that this person was most likely Jigen's true form. The four Otsutsuki above had all appeared to destroy Madara at the end. A roaring sound suddenly came from the distance. When Madara went over, he was shocked to find that there was actually a tailed beast here, having once been the Ten-Tails Jinchuriki. He instantly recognized that this was a juvenile Ten-Tails. But the chakra capacity of this Ten-Tails couldn't even be compared to the one from the Ninja War. Looking at it this way, the Ten-Tails probably only evolves after meeting certain conditions. At this moment, the karma mark on his hand began to spread across his entire body. Suddenly appeared in his mental space. Madara was slightly surprised by Momoshiki's appearance. Remarked mockingly, "You have a pretty good head on your shoulders." The Ten-Tails method of evolution is precisely to devour an Otsutsuki and transform into a divine tree, thereby producing the chakra fruit that allows an Otsutsuki to evolve. Momoshiki then continued, "This place is precisely the intermediate staging point for the Otsutsuki before invading other planets. The three pairs of totems on the wall signify that this dimension belongs to these three pairs of members." After speaking, Momoshiki began to laugh wildly. He couldn't wait to see the look on Madara's face when he got trounced by the other Otsutsuki. When that time came, he would turn the tables and take over Madara's body. Bring it for a moment, then said contemptuously, he originally wanted to try controlling the Ten-Tails in front of him, but failed. Madara had no choice but to return to Konoha first to discuss it with Naruto. In the Kara base, Jigen had summoned all the inners. Due to Kawaki's disappearance, the airship crashed within the borders of the Land of Fire. They guessed that Kawaki was highly likely taken by the ninjas of Konoha. Is about to face a storm of blood and chaos. To think Madara actually faced off against the inners of the Kara organization. After Madara learned the Otsutsuki's secrets, he immediately returned to Konoha and found Naruto. Upon learning that besides Jigen, there were other Otsutsuki out there, Naruto instantly broke into a cold sweat. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he decided to form the Allied Shinobi forces once again. The Allied forces would not be an all-out strategy mobilizing the entire ninja world. Would select the most outstanding ninjas from each village to form a super ninja coalition. With an average strength above Jonin level, originally thought that implementing this plan might be somewhat difficult, but surprisingly, the other four cages agreed to this plan very readily. After all, the opponent might be an stronger than Kaguya, and the supreme commander of the Allied Shinobi forces would naturally be assumed by Naruto, the strongest. Naruto told everyone to keep it a secret for now. Before obtaining the approval of the daimyo secretly gather the top-tier combatants from each village first. Everyone agreed. After all, they didn't have the right to refuse. The strong always make the rules. That night, Madara and Naruto decided to strike based on the intel provided by Kawaki. They found one of the Kara organization's bases. The two split up, their goal being to gather more intel on Kara. Naruto found Victor, an inner member, in a secret room. Driven into a corner, Victor decided to fight to the death. He rapidly formed hand signs and unleashed fire style. But Naruto simply caught the fireball with a chakra arm. As an infamous enemy of Kara. Don't tell me this is all the strength you have. Hearing this, Victor narrowed his old eyes. He immediately followed up with Earth style, Sandstorm, combined with Water style, Water formation wall. Naruto dodged the attack with a sidestep and smashed a Rasengan right into his face. But the damage caused by the Rasengan was rapidly and automatically healed. Naruto's gaze grew sharp. He didn't expect him to have such a strong regenerative ability. Had actually reached such how powerful Naruto was, panicked Victor and tried to flee. But Naruto, with a body flicker, pinned him against the wall. Victor immediately begged Naruto to let him go. He promised that whatever intel he wanted, he would tell him everything he knew. Naruto smiled faintly, then summoned the giant toad's stomach, binding Victor inside. On the other side, Madara encountered the extremely dangerous Deepa. Deepa had a highly arrogant attitude. He condensed a massive number of stone blocks and hurled them all at Madara. But Madara breezed through this hail of projectiles as easily as a spring breeze. Deepa's pupils shook in shock. This was the first time he'd met someone who could survive his carbon rain. Hearing this, that someone Madara like you is disappointedly formidable clown that the Kawaki brat mentioned, provoked by his words. Deepa flew into a rage. He solidified the carbon he had into an incredibly tough armor covering his body and charged at Madara. Deepa was ultimately reduced to a pile of ashes. After the battle ended, Madara realized he forgot Naruto's instruction to gather intel. Upon regrouping with Naruto, he casually claimed that clown didn't know anything. Naruto, however, managed to extract quite a bit of intel from Victor. They decided to thoroughly investigate the locations one by one. But at this moment, Sai's giant bird suddenly flew in from the sky. After landing, the giant bird turned into an intel scroll. This was an emergency message from Konoha. Gaara's hidden sand village was attacked by Otsutsuki, and the one-tailed Shukaku was stolen. The 9 tails inside Naruto also sensed the disappearance of the 3 tails, 5 tails, and this 6 was tails not something Yurishiki could accomplish realizing alone. Someone was collecting the tailed beast. Decided to head back to Konoha first. To think Naruto actually got to see the Naruto landed that Gaara had been immediately returned to Konoha. According to Gaara's description, there was something resembling the Gedo statue appearing next to Yurishiki at the time. The chains extending from that monster instantly sucked Shukaku into its stomach. After hearing this, Naruto couldn't help but feel a strong ominous premonition. Kaguya's face flashed in his mind, but he quickly shook his head, thinking it was in order to prepare for the impending war. Naruto had Sai send a bird with a letter to return to the village. At the same time, he asked the hidden cloud to increase the security. Since Naruto needed to stay behind to guard Konoha, Madara decided to go alone to the Kara intelligence locations they had just gathered. At this time, in Kaguya's Genesis dimension, having absorbed 7-tailed beasts, Kaguya finally restored her original appearance. To collect the remaining 8 tails, and she decided to personally make a move with the activation of Ameta Minako from the Sharingan on her forehead. Once again descended upon the ninja world. Meanwhile, due to the complete annihilation of the frontline base, the usually calm Jigen was no longer calm. After days of investigation, he finally confirmed Kawaki's whereabouts and the intel regarding Madara. Relying on his Otsutsuki battle instincts, He foresaw that if he didn't eliminate the guy named Madara right now, that guy would become the biggest obstacle to their plans. After ordering the other inners to guard the main base, Jigen prepared to go to Konoha alone to take back Kawaki. By this time, after days of getting to know each other, Kawaki had gradually integrated into Naruto's family. Just as he was eating breakfast with Naruto on his hand suddenly triggered a space-time portal. The next second, a chilling voice came from inside. Kawaki, have you been a good boy? Jigen's figure slowly emerged from the space-time immediately portal. Stood up, seeing Jigen Kawaki behind him. Kawaki trembled all over and froze in place. Seeing this, Naruto told Hinata to take Kawaki and run to Jigen's side and fiercely smashed a Rasengan at him. But before the Rasengan even touched by the karma mark, while Naruto was shocked, Jigen had already kicked him away. Jigen turned, pulled out black rods at the fleeing Hinata. Naruto immediately flew over and blocked in front of Kawaki and Hinata. In the next instant, the suddenly enlarged black rods pierced his shoulder. Kawaki looked at the figure blocking the attack for him. He turned back and asked Naruto why. This was the first time he felt what it was like smiled to be cared for. Said that protecting all is of his responsibility as the Hokage. After saying that, he pushed Hinata and Kawaki away and simultaneously activated his Kurama Chakra mode to fight. Mitsuki's two white snakes tightly wrapped at the same time. Jigen from behind unleashed majestic destroyer flame at him. Team Boruto descended from the sky, appearing in front of Naruto. Seeing this, Naruto anxiously told them to get out of there quickly. This opponent is not someone they can handle, he sighed inwardly. With both Madara and Sasuke away from Konoha, the situation was really looking grim. When the smoke cleared, Jigen was indeed standing there completely unharmed. He mockingly stated that no matter how many rats there are, after saying that, there's still he raised just his hand, preparing to shoot black rods at Team Boruto. Seeing this, Naruto launched a preemptive strike. But Jigen shrank himself, making Naruto hit nothing but air. Jigen immediately enlarged himself again and kicked Naruto from behind, sending him flying. After tumbling for dozens of meters, Naruto headed straight toward Kawaki's group. Unexpected happened. A flying thunder god kunai suddenly shot right in front of Kawaki and the others. The next second, the reanimated Minato appeared with a body flicker. Minato smiled and said, "Am I late?" Jigen stopped in his tracks and stared at the sky. The next second, the voices of the other cages rang out from above. Hashirama shouted, "Is this an Otsutsuki like Kaguya?" Tobirama stated that whoever was destroying Konoha, no matter who it was, he wouldn't let them off. Finally, the third Hokage who arrived reminded everyone not to let their guard down. After Naruto got up, he was so shocked seeing everyone that his jaw nearly dropped. He yelled "Dad," while simultaneously asking them what was going on. Minato finally gets to meet Boruto in the future, just when Naruto was losing ground against Jigen. The past Hokages of Konoha suddenly arrived to save the day. Naruto was left utterly stunned. He asked Minato what exactly was happening. Minato smiled and told Naruto not to drop his guard, and that he'd explain after they defeated Jigen. After saying that, Minato began throwing shuriken at Jigen continuously. Seeing this, Jigen smirked disdainfully. Having lain dormant in the ninja world for thousands of years, he naturally had intel on the past Hokages. He stood still, constantly shrinking the incoming shuriken, while mockingly stating that such attacks were useless against him. Suddenly, Minato mixed a flying thunder god kunai among the shuriken, although this kunai was ultimately shrunk as well. What Jigen didn't expect was that the flying thunder god mark wouldn't disappear just because the object was shrunk. Minato's figure suddenly appeared behind Jigen. He immediately grabbed Jigen and activated the second stage of flying, teleporting them to a desolate, uninhabited area. Seeing Minato's plan succeed, Tobirama immediately utilized the flying thunder god mark he had left on Minato during the ninja war. Taking Hashirama and the third Hokage with him, he teleported right next to Minato. Fighting in Konoha carried the risk of harming civilians, so they wouldn't be able to go all out. Naruto stood blankly in his spot, then yelled out, "I haven't even gotten on the ride yet," regarding what had just happened. He was still completely shocked. He muttered under his breath, "Could this be that guy Orochimaru's doing again?" But then, a man wearing a cloak slowly walked out from the side. This was none other than Kabuto Yakushi. Naruto's shocked face became even more shocked. Kabuto smiled wickedly and then explained the whole story. It was Madara who, to prevent Jigen from launching a surprise attack while he was away, had Orochimaru make preparations for the Edo Tensei. The moment Jigen was spotted in Konoha, it was to be activated immediately. And the reason Madara didn't discuss this with Naruto beforehand was precisely because Naruto's naive nature would never allow the use of this jutsu. But the enemy they were facing this time wasn't someone that could be defeated with hot blood, and after finishing his explanation, Kabuto smiled and said that he still had the DNA of many strong fighters from the past on hand. If they weren't enough, he wouldn't mind summoning a few more. Naruto was very repulsed by the so-called Edo Tensei. After all, it was a jutsu that desecrated the dead. Plus, this jutsu requires a living person as a sacrifice. Regarding this, Kabuto naturally knew what Naruto was thinking. He told Naruto to rest assured he didn't use living people as sacrifices this time. The current Orochimaru had long achieved success in gene cloning. The sacrifices used this time were all lifeless clones. Hearing this, Naruto finally breathed a sigh of relief. At this moment, Boruto came up and asked that Naruto who just saved us, "Is he really my grandpa? And who are those other people?" Hearing this, Sarada patted Boruto's shoulder, motioning for him to look at the Hokage rock behind them. Boruto took a quick glance, and then suddenly shouted, "Why are the past Hokages here?" Naruto helplessly scratched his head. He signaled for Boruto to wait until the battle was over. Then he took him to meet Minato. After temporarily leaving the village's matters to Boruto, Naruto headed to the battlefield himself. At this time, in a desolate desert, the 4 Konoha Hokages were standing opposite Jigen, looking at the 4 Edo Tensei bodies before him. Jigen couldn't help but remark, "This jutsu really is quite something. You 4 seems to have surpassed your level when you were alive." Because the jutsu Kabuto used this time was an improved version of Edo Tensei. The reanimated individuals were brought back in a form that surpassed their peak strength when alive. Therefore, the 3rd Hokage's appearance right now wasn't that of an old man, but that of his youth. Hashirama glanced at Jigen and said, "Although this era is not ours, since the ninja world is on the brink of destruction, as Hokages, we will naturally answer the call of our juniors and defeat you when they were just reanimated." Kabuto had already told them about the Otsutsuki. Hearing this, Jigen sneered, "Then let me show you just how vast the gap is between the god of shinobi and a true god. Konoha's F4 in their prime are finally going to fight Jigen to combat Otsutsuki Ishiki." Orochimaru and Kabuto once again reanimated the past Hokages. At this moment, Minato had used Flying Thunder God to teleport Jigen to the outskirts. Jigen knew that to get Kawaki back, it would be impossible without first defeating these 4. His figure suddenly flashed beside Hashirama, and a fierce punch pierced right through Hashirama's body. But his satisfaction was short-lived. As Jigen realized something was wrong, Hashirama suddenly turned into a giant tree, trapping his hand inside it. The next instant, wooden thorns thrust towards him. But Jigen's figure suddenly vanished, and shortly after, reappeared not far away. Minato expressed his surprise, wondering if the opponent also knew Flying Thunder God. Tobirama just calmly observed, then told Saru to probe for intel first. The 3rd Hokage immediately unleashed Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. Hundreds and thousands of shuriken flew towards Jigen, but any shuriken right in front of Jigen would mysteriously disappear. Suddenly, Minato, holding a Rasengan, appeared behind Jigen. Jigen turned around with a start, raising a hand to absorb the Rasengan, while simultaneously producing a black rod with his other hand to parry the third Hokage's shuriken. Seeing this, Tobirama's gaze narrowed. It seems the opponent's ability to make shuriken disappear was likely some sort of visual jutsu released through his eyes, judging from the fact that Minato's kunai disappeared earlier, yet he was still able to activate Flying Thunder God. He deduced that this must be an ability that shrinks objects to a microscopic size. After Jigen absorbed the Rasengan, several black rods suddenly pierced through Minato. Jigen reached out to continue his attack, but Minato immediately used Flying Thunder God to return to Tobirama's side. After this round of probing, they had a rough idea of Jigen's abilities. The next step was to exploit the advantage of their Edo Tensei to wear the opponent down. Hashirama cast with style, Thorny Binding, continuously using vines to restrain Jigen. The third Hokage summoned the adamantine staff and engaged Jigen in taijutsu. Right now, Jigen not only had to face the fierce attacks of the youthful third Hokage head-on, but also watch out for Hashirama's vines beneath his feet. At the same time, he had to keep his guard up against Tobirama and Minato, who could launch a sneak attack at any moment, damning these pesky wild monkeys. Before recapturing Kawaki, he hadn't wanted to cause too much damage to Jigen's body this early. But looking at things now, he had to get serious. Jigen furiously activated the second state of his karma. His sudden surge in strength left the third Hokage instantly powerless to defend. Hashirama took the opportunity to tightly wrap Jigen up, but the vines couldn't hold him at all. Jigen broke free from the restraints, leapt up, and launched a flying kick towards Hashirama and the others. Seeing this, Hashirama immediately deployed the quintuple Rashomon to block it. But Jigen's attack unexpectedly pierced through all the Rashomon gates in one breath, simultaneously obliterated Hashirama's and Tobirama's bodies. He contemptuously remarked that the ultimate shield was nothing special. A massive number of explosive tags stuck themselves onto his body. This was exactly Tobirama's mutually multiplying explosive tags. Explosive flames shot towards the sky and the earth trembled. But soon, the explosions came to an abrupt halt. Jigen had shrunk all the explosive tags in one breath. He walked out of the smoke with his clothes in tatters, and a smile crept onto the corner of his mouth. He stated that he had a lot of fun today, but he knew in his heart that completely destroying these for Edo Tensei individuals would take a lot of time. At the same time, he also guessed that Naruto must be rushing over here before capturing Kawaki. He couldn't afford to be too reckless, otherwise he'd truly be done for. Jigen crossed his arms and said, "Until we meet again." In the next second, dozens of black rods shot up from the ground towards the cages. Although they immediately jumped back, Jigen used this opportunity to leave the area through a space-time portal. Hashirama couldn't help but sigh. Jigen is truly a terrifying foe. Fortunately, this battle basically revealed his abilities. Shortly after, Naruto finally arrived. Seeing no trace of Jigen, he asked them in confusion if Jigen had already been taken care of. Tobirama looked coldly at Naruto and said, "I didn't expect after all this time. You're still as airheaded as ever." They are finally going to battle Otsutsuki Ishiki. At this moment, Naruto finally found Konoha's F4. Although a great enemy loomed over them, Naruto was still overjoyed to see everyone again. Minato looked at Naruto with tears in his eyes. Seeing the weather-beaten yet resolute look in his eyes, he then smiled gently, congratulating Naruto for finally becoming Hokage. Receiving a father's long-overdue blessing, Naruto grinned widely. Even though he was now a grown man standing 1.8 meters tall, in front of Minato, he still acted like a child. Because the past Hokages fought Jigen the moment they were reanimated. Only now did they have a moment to chat. After a brief catch-up, everyone followed Naruto back to Konoha. Hearing of everyone's resurrection, Kakashi and Tsunade made a rare visit to Naruto's place together. The two of them greeted Minato and Hashirama in unison. As for Minato, the moment he saw Boruto, he walked over without a second thought, saying, "Come on, call me Grandpa." Boruto was stunned for a moment, although he had seen what Minato looked like on trading cards. Now seeing the real person, he truly understood what it meant to be the fastest ninja in Shippuden. Boruto's face instantly turned red, and he stammered out the word Grandpa. By some stroke of luck, the grandfather and grandson finally had this cross-temporal reunion. Regarding this Ito Tensei, because of the Otsutsuki threat, Minato and the would others probably stay for quite a long time. Naruto cleared his throat to get to the point. He told the Hokages about the current situation in the ninja world, learning that Madara was also in this era and was currently fighting for Konoha. Hashirama excitedly let out a smile. He didn't expect that guy Madara to have a side like this. Tobirama, however, subconsciously complained, that evil Uchiha. He just won't go away. Suddenly, an urgent message came from Konoha's barrier team. Amado, claiming to be a member of the Kara organization, had taken Shikadai hostage and demanded to speak with the Hokage. Hearing that his son was taken hostage, Shikamaru instantly lost his composure. Naruto comforted Shikamaru, telling him not to panic. Right now, there were 7 cage-level ninjas present. Upon meeting, Amado got straight to the point. His goal was to seek asylum in Konoha. As an exchange condition, what he could offer in return was all the intel on the Kara organization. Naruto and the others didn't quite believe him at first. When Amado used his glasses to display the surveillance footage of the Kara base, everyone was instantly stunned. In the footage, it showed the exact moment Madara encountered Jigen returning to the base. Amado stated calmly, "Next, your comrade is in danger." Hashirama, without a second thought, wanted to go assist, but Tobirama told him to wait. At this time, the Kara base had already been destroyed beyond recognition by Madara. Lay on the ground, clothes torn and battered. Seeing his home base wrecked, Jigen was furious and swore to make Madara pay in blood. Madara turned around and asked disdainfully, "Are you Jigen?" Without a word, Jigen launched a flying kick, but his attack was blocked by some unseen force. Madara reached out to grab Jigen, but Jigen's body suddenly vanished and immediately reappeared in the air. He fired several black rods, although most of the black rods hit the Limbo clones. Madara's true body still sustained minor injuries from its waist and fiercely slashed down. Not only did it inherit Susanu's destructive power, but it also overcame Susanu's lack of speed. Although Jigen immediately shrank himself and dodged the strike, Madara had already anticipated to dodge. Almost simultaneously, he unleashed Majestic Destroyer Flame at the spot where Jigen shrank. Jigen didn't care about this ninjutsu at all. Even in his shrunken state, he still possessed the ability to absorb ninjutsu. But Madara smiled, because the moment Jigen absorbed the ninjutsu, he also exposed his own position. Another Susanoo blade had already swept over. Seeing that dodging in time was impossible, Jigen hurriedly opened a space-time portal to hide in. After reappearing not far away, he gritted his teeth, cursing the damn wild monkey. Was the legendary Susanoo's speed really this fast? In Konoha, Hashirama, watching Madara's battle through the monitors, gasped in amazement. He praised Madara for his interesting ideas. When they fought in the past, it was majestic attire nine-tails. He never thought that now he could actually clad the wood golem in Susanoo. At this moment, Jigen leapt up, gathered his power, and launched a fierce kick at Madara. The majestic attire would go to meet the attack with a punch. The moment they clashed, destruction rained down, producing an earth-shattering roar. When the smoke cleared, the majestic attire with Golem's arm was battered and ruined. Jigen laughed arrogantly, saying Susanoo's defense was nothing special. But in the next second, his laughter abruptly ceased. The black receptacle on his abdomen suddenly developed multiple cracks, having just fought the 4 Hokages, and then immediately battling Madara. Jigen's body was clearly about to collapse under the strain of these intense battles. Looking at Jigen kneeling on one knee, Madara said nonchalantly, out of breath already from dancing. Suddenly, dozens of vines shot up from the ground, tightly wrapping around Jigen. In the next episode, the two will decide the victor. To think Madara actually met the Sage of Six Paths. At this moment, the battle between Madara and Jigen reached its climax. The prolonged, intense battle had already to appear on the black receptacle. He wanted to end the battle and use space-time ninjutsu to temporarily retreat. But Madara suddenly said something shocking, exposing Jigen's secret of rearing the 10 tails in a certain dimension. Hearing this, Jigen was startled. He demanded to know how Madara found that place. Madara didn't answer directly, but merely expressed that he was also quite becoming the Ten-Tails Jinchuriki. Hearing this, Jigen felt as if his reverse scale had been touched. He abandoned the idea of retreating, deciding to execute Madara right here. Seeing that the opponent took the bait, Madara smiled faintly. He formed hand signs and cast Fire-style Ash Dust Hiding Jutsu, boosted by Sage Chakra. The high-temperature ash instantly covered the surroundings. Visibility in the area instantly dropped to 0, but relying on Sage Mode's sensory abilities, he could still clearly know the opponent's location. Jigen initially wanted to reach out and use Karma to absorb the smoke. Directions was too much to absorb with his Karma in time. He had to use Sukune Kona to continuously shrink the exploding flames around him. Seizing the opportunity while the opponent was Madara continued his offensive while protecting himself with Susanoo. He commanded the 4 recovered Limbo clones to stand in different directions around Jigen, then unleashed the 5-style Great Combo. This battle of endurance lasted for several full minutes. Jigen's body finally reached its limit, and he was engulfed by the monstrous flames. The people watching the live broadcast cheered triumphantly. But Amadu shook his head, putting an end to their cheering. With a solemn expression, he stated, "Next, Madara is in danger." Jigen was merely a vessel for Otsutsuki Ishiki, not his true form. He explained to everyone the principle behind how the Otsutsuki reincarnate using Karma. Kawaki's anguished cries echoed from outside the conference room. Then, the Karma mark on his body vanished into thin air. This was exactly the signal that Otsutsuki Ishiki had reincarnated through Jigen's body. On the battlefield, the raging flames suddenly vanished. Otsutsuki Ishiki, dressed in tattered clothes, emerged from the smoke. Madara's gaze sharpened. This was exactly the Otsutsuki he had seen in that secret dimension earlier. Suddenly, the sage markings of Hashirama's face on his chest gradually faded away. In that massive clash just now, his sage chakra had been completely depleted. Ishiki angrily declared that he would make Madara pay today. He then teleported to Madara's side and launched a fierce punch. Madara, relying on Limbo's cover, jumped upwards and launched Fire-style Dragon Flame Release. But with just a glance, Ishiki shrank the flying fire dragons. Now, the power he possessed compared to Jigen was completely night and day. Several cubes suddenly appeared above Madara. In midair, Madara obviously couldn't dodge them. He had no choice but to cast Shinra Tensei to barely block the cubes. Seeing this, Ishiki swiped both sleeves lightly, and countless black rods shot towards Madara. This was a completely unavoidable attack. Madara intended to swap places with his Limbo clone, but found that the Limbo clones had all been pinned by Ishiki's black rods. Left with no other option, he had to activate Susanoo for defense. But Susanoo couldn't block this assault at all. In just a few seconds, Susanoo began to crumble. In an instant, he was pierced like a pincushion. Ishiki stepped forward, grabbing him by the throat, then followed up with a cube, saying, "It's over." Madara was ultimately crushed beneath the black cube. With only one breath left, he didn't expect Ishiki to be this powerful. With this overwhelming strength, even that brat Naruto probably couldn't stop him. Before losing consciousness, his life began to flash before his eyes. Figures of Hashirama and Izuna flashed in his mind, as well as his disciples, Sarada and Boruto. Although he hadn't been here for long, he had to admit he quite liked it here. Suddenly, his consciousness appeared in a dimly lit mental space. An old man wearing a white robe was floating in the air. It was none other than the Sage of Six Paths. The time-traveling Madara finally obtains the Six Paths power again. At this moment, the dying Madara suddenly appeared in a dimly lit space. An old man wearing a white robe was floating in the air. It was none other than the Sage of Six Paths. Regarding the appearance of the Sage of Six Paths, Madara wasn't overly surprised. After all, he had already heard Naruto tell him about this person. Perhaps due to being Indra's reincarnate, Madara didn't have much fondness for the Sage of Six Paths. He asked the sage what he wanted from him, and if there was nothing, he'd be leaving. The Sage of Six Paths smiled and told Madara not to be in a hurry to leave, hoping that Madara could stop Ishiki. and stop his mother, Kaguya. Hearing this, Madara was slightly surprised. In confusion, wasn't Kaguya sealed by that brat Naruto 16 years ago? To this, the Sage of Six Paths explained. Several months ago, he sensed that the Chubaku Tensei sealing Kaguya was undone. After that, he lost connection with the tailed beasts. From the one tail to the seven tails, he guessed that the tailed beasts were most likely taken by Kaguya. Listening to the Sage of Six Paths rambling, Madara impatiently stated that he had no interest in playing savior. Hearing this, the Sage of Six Paths smiled what he and thought of this Madara. World. Is this the ideal world in your heart? Madara lowered his head, recalling all his experiences since time traveling. Although he didn't want to admit it, he still liked it here quite a bit. However, compared to playing more interested in the news of Kaguya being unsealed. Because Black Zetsu, who stabbed him must have also been unsealed, right? Receiving an answer he hadn't expected from Madara. The Sage of Six Paths smiled faintly. He told Madara that since he liked it here, then he should protect the peace here. With that, he reached out his hands, stating he was giving Madara a great gift. Madara stood still without responding for a long time, as if figuring something out. He stepped forward and accepted the sage's offer. The Sage of Six entrusted all the strongest power he had condensed so far to Madara, and then instructed. Perhaps the reason my mother initiated the infinite Tsukuyomi back then was to combat the Otsutsuki of today. If she still refuses to change her ways this time and intends to devour the ninja world, please use this power to seal her again for me. Protect this place well. Hearing this, Madara snorted coldly and said, "You don't need to tell me that. I'll protect this place well." Looking at the now enlightened Indra reincarnate, the Sage of Six Paths smiled with relief. After entrusting all his power to Madara, he dissipated into the world. At this time in the real world, the black cube pressing down on Madara flew high into the sky. Madara slowly opened his eyes. His pair of Rinnegan had stunningly evolved into double six-tamo Rinnegan. 9 truth-seeking orbs slowly materialized behind him. At the same time, Hashirama's face on his chest gradually faded away, because he could now perfectly integrate Hashirama's cells. Hashirama's face would naturally no longer appear due to cell rejection. A smile curved on Madara's lips. Right now, whether it was chakra reserves or regenerative ability, he was multiple times stronger than before. He had also obtained the power of the Six Paths. The only regret was that he could no longer have Hashirama's face tattooed on his chest. Ishiki was no longer here. He decided to return to Konoha first. At this time, people in Konoha were in a state of deep anxiety. Shortly after Jigen transformed into Ishiki, they lost visual feed of the battlefield situation. Hashirama proposed they immediately head to the battlefield to support, but Amadu poured cold water on his idea. Heading to that battlefield now was clearly too late. He told everyone to get ready for battle. Ishiki would probably soon arrive at Konoha to capture Kawaki. Just as Naruto was about to announce that the village was entering a state of war, a familiar figure suddenly pushed open the doors of the Hokage's office. It was Uchiha Madara. Everyone present shouted Madara's name in surprise. Tobirama even subconsciously assumed a combat stance. But Madara paid him absolutely no mind. Instead, he looked toward his dearly missed Hashirama. The Madara who traveled to the future finally met Hashirama once again. Madara, having obtained Six Paths power, finally returned to Konoha. The moment Tobirama saw Madara, he instinctively told Hashirama to get ready to fight. But when he turned to look, Hashirama's figure was already nowhere to be seen. He saw Hashirama hugging Madara with snot and tears running down his face. The scene was utterly painful to watch. Madara pushed Hashirama away with a hint of disgust. He stated sternly, "Now is not the time to catch up." Tobirama looked Madara up and down. He could sense that Madara's power, compared to when he fought Jigen, had reached an even higher level. This feeling, it was exactly like the feeling Sasuke gave him back then. Naruto curiously asked Madara what exactly happened. Madara gave a brief account of his encounter with the Sage of Six Paths. Hearing this, Naruto smiled faintly. It seems the old man Six Paths now acknowledges the current Uchiha Madara too, learning from Madara that Kaguya had resurrected. Everyone was even more astonished. Suddenly, the disconnected monitor displayed an image again. In the footage, it was Otsutsuki Ishiki, who had just returned to another base. He muttered curses at the damned Uchiha Madara. He was not going to let him off. After shrinking the important data in the base and placing it into the Daikokuten dimension, Ishiki turned around, ready to head to Konoha. But suddenly, a flame bullet struck him from behind. The attacker was none other than Kashin Koji. With just a glance, the incoming flame bullet, seeing Kashin Koji, he stated coldly, "So it is as I expected. You are the traitor who let Kawaki escape." Seeing this scene, the people in Konoha were completely stunned, especially Tsunade, the third Hokage, and Naruto, who were closely connected with Jiraiya. The three of them simultaneously looked towards Amado, trying to get some answers from him. Seeing this, Amado sighed first. Then he said, "Just as you see, Kashin Koji is indeed the clone of the legendary Sannin, Jiraiya." The moment she heard this, Tsunade couldn't sit still. She agitatedly stood up from her chair. Seeing this, Amado continued to speak as if no one was there. After Jiraiya sacrificed himself in the hidden rain, Amado used special machines to retrieve Jiraiya's body from the bottom of the sea. Then, through genetic modification, he successfully created Kashin Koji, whose strength matched Jiraiya's. Hearing this, Tsunade cursed aloud. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, Kashin Koji summoned true fire of Samadhi. Ishiki originally wanted to absorb the flames before him, but to his surprise, he found that these flames couldn't be absorbed at all because they were real flames that exist in nature. Seeing this, Kashin Koji immediately summoned a toad that spewed out a massive amount of toad oil. The sea of fire raged fiercely. Ishiki could only use Sukuna Haikona to shrink the fierce flames in front of him, but a massive Rasengan suddenly attacked from another direction. Kashin Koji tried to attack Ishiki from both sides, but Ishiki had long seen through his intentions. He teleported behind Kashin Koji and kicked him into the sea of fire, which had expanded back to its normal size. Seeing this scene, Naruto's face instantly filled with panic. He looked at Amado and said, "We must go to the battlefield to save him." Amado shook his head upon hearing this. The destiny for which Kashin Koji was created is only one: to defeat Ishiki. From the moment he went to fight Ishiki, he was already prepared to face death, just like Jiraiya back then. Knowing the outcome, he still had to step forward. Hearing this, an enraged Tsunade lifted Amado up by his collar. Hashirama told Tsunade to calm down. "Even if you kill Amado here, that guy named Kashin Koji won't be saved." Tsunade had to give her grandfather some face. She warned Amado to watch himself and then let go. Amado knew the relationship between Tsunade and Jiraiya. He told Tsunade not to forget that Kashin Koji carried Jiraiya's genetic material. He didn't go to die in vain, rather inheriting that man's will. He was risking his life to gather intel on the enemy for everyone. Hearing this, Tsunade helplessly slammed her fist into the wall. Naruto is finally going to battle Otsutsuki Ishiki. After Naruto learned that Kashin Koji was Jiraiya's clone, he immediately stood up, ready to head to the battlefield to rescue him. But Amado told Naruto not to waste time. Right now, hiding Kawaki was the most secure plan. Naruto replied solemnly, "In the past, I failed to save my master, and I've regretted it endlessly. If right now I watch helplessly again as my master's clone is killed, then what right do I have to be Hokage?" With that, he turned to look at Madara, and after a long silence, asked him to lend a hand. Madara expressed with a hint of disgust, "What a troublesome guy. But this actually suits me. After all, that guy named Jiraiya could be said to have been indirectly killed by me. Now helping Naruto can be considered compensation for having turned the ninja world upside down in the past." Before leaving, Naruto had Shikamaru take Kawaki and Amado to a secret room with a special barrier. That secret room could effectively block the Byakugan's vision. Then, Madara used the base's coordinates provided by Amado to open a space-time portal with his Rinnegan. Going along with them were the Ito Tensei Hokages. Just then, Boruto suddenly stepped begging forward, everyone to take him along too. Madara initially wanted to refuse, but when he saw Boruto's eyes full of resolve, he gladly agreed to Boruto's request. Anyway, with that guy named Minato and Tobirama's flying thunder god present, he figured Boruto wouldn't be in too much danger. The group went through the space-time portal one by one. What greeted their eyes was Ishiki, unleashing a massive number of cubes at Kashin Koji. Seeing this, Naruto, with extreme speed, rescued Kashin Koji from under Ishiki's black cubes. Ishiki, slightly surprised, glanced around, then mockingly said, "You really went out of your way to come all this distance just to die." He ultimately fixed his gaze on Madara. A smirk crept onto Madara's lips. This was the funniest joke he had heard so far. Naruto told Madara to hold off Ishiki first while he tended to the heavily injured Kashin Koji. Suddenly, a thunder god kunai brushed past Ishiki. In the next second, Minato, holding a Rasengan, appeared right behind Ishiki. But in just a split second, Ishiki grabbed Minato's wrist with one hand and kicked Minato away. Seeing this, Naruto frantically yelled for his dad. Tobirama told him to calm down. That kid was just using the advantage of his Edo Tensei body to gather intel. The entire motion took less than a second. Ishiki's speed was leagues apart from Jigen's. Ishiki's figure suddenly flashed in front of everyone. Of everyone present, only Madara's Six-Damo could keep up with his movements. When Ishiki threw a punch, Madara met it head-on with a straight punch of his own. The battlefield instantly erupted with a massive shockwave. For the people around, even just staying on their feet was extremely difficult. Ishiki gritted his teeth and looked at Madara. He didn't expect Madara's strength to have grown so much in such a short time. He concluded that Madara was definitely the Otsutsuki's biggest anomaly. He had to eliminate him here today. Suddenly, Tobirama launched a flying thunder god slash at Ishiki, but Ishiki easily reacted, using his visual jutsu to shrink the opponent's kunai, and followed up with a volley of black rods that could damage Edo Tensei bodies. Seeing that Tobirama was about to become a pincushion, Madara immediately used his limbo clone to swap places with him. This was exactly one of the new abilities he gained upon awakening the Tamo Rinnegan. Now, not only had his limbo clones increased to 8, but his left eye could also freely swap positions between a limbo clone and any other object. Rescued by Madara, Tobirama had a complicated expression. That guy actually saved me. Madara arrogantly told Tobirama not to misunderstand. He just felt that Tobirama still had some use, which was why he stepped in. Even though he knew this Madara was on their side, it still made Tobirama feel a bit awkward. The memory of Madara stabbing a black into his skull years ago was still vivid in his mind. Hashirama, seeing his little brother almost get killed, furiously launched with style spikes at Ishiki. But Ishiki's figure vanished abruptly, appearing right behind Hashirama the next instant. Before Hashirama could react, his chest was pierced. The time-traveling Konoha F4 are finally engaging Ishiki in combat. At this moment, Ishiki's fierce punch pierced right through Hashirama's Edo Tensei body. Seeing this, Madara launched his limbo clones at Ishiki. But Ishiki rapidly dodged the limbo, arriving right in front of the third Hokage, thrusting a black rod upwards. He instantly severed one of the third Hokage's arms. Madara then delivered a fierce kick to Ishiki's back. But in a flash, Ishiki's figure vanished again. The next instant, he reappeared several meters away. He glared at Madara, and dozens of black rods materialized out of Madara. Effortlessly blocked the attack with a black rod condensed from truth-seeking orbs. Now that he had awakened the Tamo Rinnegan, he could clearly see the trajectory of the opponent's black rods. Ishiki found it hard to believe that someone could actually block this move of his. Suddenly, Madara's figure appeared behind him again, launching an attack. Ishiki immediately shrank himself once more, dodging Madara's witnessing Ishiki's speed with their own eyes. Everyone was astounded. In the next second, a massive number suddenly appeared above everyone. Minato immediately grabbed Boruto and used Flying Thunder God to retreat to a safe distance while dodging the cubes. continuously closed in on Ishiki. Then he hurled two truth-seeking orbs at Ishiki. Ishiki stood motionless in place, shrinking the incoming truth-seeking orbs. But only then did he realize that the truth-seeking orb's attack was just a decoy. He himself was already surrounded by Madara's 8 limbo clones. All of Madara's limbo clones, although Ishiki could barely keep up. Two fists are ultimately no match for many hands. He had no choice but to shrink himself to dodge the flurry of punches from the limbo clones. Seeing the instant the opponent shrank, Madara immediately launched Sage Art. Yin released lightning dispatch. A massive area of lightning instantly covered a radius of hundreds of meters. Ishiki, in his shrunken state, was forced to stop in his tracks to absorb the ninjutsu. Seeing that the opponent had exposed his position, maintained the lightning style while simultaneously launching another limbo attack. Punch from a limbo clone accurately smashed into the shrunken Ishiki. Madara's main body pressed the advantage, turning a truth-seeking orb behind him into the sword of Ninoboko and charged forward. Ishiki, while retreating, shot the two truth-seeking orbs he had just absorbed back at Madara. Seeing this, Madara's gaze couldn't help but sharpen, but he couldn't stop his charge. On the sidelines, Minato shouted, telling Madara to just keep charging forward. The next second, Minato appeared, teleporting away the two truth-seeking orbs. Seeing this, Madara couldn't help but smile inwardly. He didn't expect that the tactic used against him during the ninja war back then would actually be reproduced now. Gripping the sword of Ninoboko, he drove straight in. Ishiki snapped his eyes open, ready to shrink the sword of Ninoboko, but he found that he couldn't shrink it. In a panic, he summoned a black cube to block in front of himself. Although the sword of Ninoboko pierced into the cube, it ultimately couldn't break completely through it. Seeing this, everyone was horrified, wondering what that thing was that could actually block the Sage of 6 Paths' strongest weapon. Ishiki smiled disdainfully. Mere half-breeds of Kaguya and humans. How could this kind of annoying weapon possibly contend with the special material from the Otsutsuki planet? Right at this moment, a kunai from out of nowhere flew towards Ishiki's direction. Ishiki looked up, only to realize it was thrown by the unremarkable Boruto. He sneered, preparing to activate his visual jutsu to shrink the kunai, but he found he couldn't shrink it. That kunai suddenly poofed into a cloud of white smoke. The next moment, Naruto rushed out, holding a raisin shuriken. He smiled and told Ishiki, "This is for you." Before Ishiki could react, the Rasen storm detonated upon him. Madara, seeing this, was so also amused. This is the legendary #1 unpredictable ninja. Minato, the Hokage, third, and the recovered Hashirama also walked over at this time. When the smoke cleared, Ishiki stood up, his clothes in tatters. He gritted his teeth and said, "These damn wild monkeys just keep coming." Afterward, he retrieved a brand new outfit from Dekokyuten and changed into it. Naruto's participation will kick off the final battle with Ishiki. To think Madara and Hashirama actually used Susanoo-clad Buddha. At this time, Naruto, Madara, and the others temporarily suppressed Ishiki. Humiliated and enraged, Ishiki released all the weapons from Dekokyuten. Madara immediately manipulated his turning them into a barrier to shield everyone from above. After the attack subsided, they saw Ishiki reaching out to open a space-time portal. And on the other side of the portal was the juvenile tentails he was rearing. Ishiki's arm reached through the portal and continuously absorbed the tentail's chakra. Soon, his horn became larger and more rounded. Naruto couldn't help but his eyes in shock. With Sage Mode activated, he could clearly sense Ishiki's current terrifying power. Before he could warn everyone, Ishiki had already appeared in front of Madara. Madara reacted with godlike manifesting a black rod to block the opponent's attack. But the immense force made him grit his teeth and tremble all over. The next second, Ishiki immediately used his visual to shrink the black rod Madara used to block. His fierce punch landed directly on Madara's abdomen. The massive impact sent Madara flying backward for hundreds of meters. Everyone was astonished. Suddenly, Ishiki's figure appeared behind Naruto. Before Naruto could react, he was already kicked away heavily. Suddenly, Madara's figure rocketed up from the smoke. He didn't expect that Ishiki's normal attacks already packed the power of the 8 Inner Gates Evening Elephant. This was the second person since that bullcut guy who made him so excited. After he had all 8 Limbo clones simultaneously activate Susanoo and charge together to attack Ishiki. The battlefield was instantly filled with the flashing of blades. Ishiki, with great ease in this hail of attacks, freely wove through them and used black cubes to restrict the Limbo clones' movements one by one, spotting an opening when Ishiki attacked. Hashirama activated with style, with dragon to tightly bind Ishiki's body. Seeing this, Madara immediately launched Storm Release, a thin, thread-like beam of light, instantly sliced the wood dragon in half. But Ishiki had already shrunk himself to dodge this move. His figure reappeared not far away. Muttering, "Not a bad move," suddenly the third Hokage, along with 4 clones, launched the 5-style massive combo at Ishiki. Initially wanted to reach out and absorb it all from behind him. The voices of Minato and Tobirama rang out, attacked from 3 sides. Ishiki had to shrink himself again to evade. He then immediately reappeared and shot black rods at Minato and the others. But Minato and Tobirama both dodged the attack using Flying Thunder God. Seeing that Tobirama, the others, and Ninetales mode Naruto had temporarily, Ishiki immediately seized the opportunity to gather natural energy. Madara knew that the other party was preparing to use True's several thousand hands. It just so happened he had a move he always wanted to try. He first launched several Great Fire Annihilation Jutsu. Shortly after, the heated atmosphere formed massive cumulonimbus clouds. In an instant, thunder rumbled. With the activation of Hashirama's True several thousand hands, Madara leapt to Hashirama's side. Then he ignited his 6-path Susanoo, continuously covering the surface of the True several thousand hands. Finally, the Susanoo-clad Buddha stood tall between heaven and earth. Ishiki, looking at the scene before him, his gaze couldn't help but suddenly, Madara used lightning style to guide the raging thunder from the sky, launching Kirin at Ishiki. Ishiki reached out to absorb it, but was surprised to find he couldn't absorb it at all, because Kirin consists of real lightning existing in nature. Kirin roared down. Having misjudged, he was already too late to dodge. Madara shouted, "Now!" Hashirama immediately launched Summit Enlightenment. Tens of thousands of Susanoo-clad wooden palms rained down, taking advantage of Kirin's paralyzing effect on Ishiki. All of the Susanoo wooden palms landed solidly on Ishiki. Ishiki finally coughed up blood and fell to his knees. Madara immediately followed up with 6 paths Chibaku Tensei. The earth instantly began to shatter. Ishiki roared, "Damn humans!" He was the Otsutsuki, who was about to become a god. Amidst his shouts, Ishiki was finally sealed within the 6 paths Chibaku Tensei. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. After all, Ishiki was much more troublesome than Momoshiki. Meanwhile, Black Zetsu, who was observing the battle from afar, defeat and snickered wickedly. Now it was finally their turn to take the stage. Naruto is finally going to learn a new Sage Mode. Right after Ishiki was defeated, everyone returned to Konoha together. Seeing the village's prosperous state today, Hashirama couldn't help but sigh with deep emotion. Tobirama looked at his own Hokage rock and gazed at the entire village, feeling quite satisfied. Now that the great enemy was destroyed, the past Hokages could finally take a good look at the Konoha managed by Naruto. But Madara told everyone not to slack off just yet. The true great enemy had not yet been eliminated. At the same time, he scolded Naruto for slacking in his training over the past few years. Naruto awkwardly scratched his head. Regarding training, he happened to have a matter he wanted to ask Hashirama about Sage Mode training. First, asked Naruto to demonstrate the Sage Jutsu he had learned. Naruto, within a few seconds, activated the Toad Sage mode of Mount Myoboku. Although the activation speed was very fast, Hashirama noticed that the natural energy he absorbed was extremely small. This is because Naruto's Sage mode was still only at the beginner stage. After saying that, he introduced his own Wood-style Sage Jutsu to Naruto. The so-called Wood-style Sage Jutsu is actually formed by combining one of the 3 great Sage Jutsus, Wood-style, and the Sage mode he uses was exactly the one taught by Katsuyu, the Slug Sage of Shikatsu Forest. Only now did Naruto realize that Sage mode actually had higher stages. But come to think of it, back when he hadn't fully mastered Sage Jutsu, he was summoned back to the village to fight Nagato. Shortly after that, he became a perfect Jinchuriki. Having gained an even stronger power, he didn't research Sage Mode much further. After some thought, Naruto decided to take a trip to Mount Myoboku because to learn Sage Jutsu, there is no faster place than there. He first summoned a messenger toad, then through it, informed Fukasaku that he wanted to go to Mount Myoboku. Upon learning of this, Fukasaku immediately used the reverse summoning jutsu to summon Naruto to Mount Myoboku. Returning here after so many years, Naruto couldn't help but reminisce about his youthful years. However, now was not the time for nostalgia. He told Fukasaku that he wanted to train Sage Mode here. Hearing this, Fukasaku readily agreed to Naruto's request. With Naruto's vast amount of combat experience, combined with the foundation of the first stage Sage Mode, mastering the second stage of Sage Mode would not be difficult. A few days later, Naruto gradually mastered the technique. Seeing Naruto's rapid progress, Fukasaku couldn't help but sigh that Naruto's potential far exceeded his imagination. He was practically like a second sage of 6 paths in just a few days' time. Naruto mastered the second stage Clear Mirror, Still Water Sage Mode. Brand new sage markings appeared on his face. He was the second person since the Sage of 6 to complete this stage of Mount Myoboku's Sage Jutsu. Suddenly, the messenger brought news that the Great Toad Sage wished to see Naruto. Naruto felt uneasy. Shortly after, he and Fukasaku came before the Great Toad Sage. As soon as the Great Toad Sage saw Naruto arrive, he asked who he was. Speechless, Naruto introduced himself once again. And the reason Gamamari wanted to see Naruto again was precisely because he had another dream recently. The blue-eyed blonde boy from before would soon once again battle a completely black entity and a formidable foe with horns. This would be a battle that leads the entire ninja world towards either unprecedented prosperity or utter destruction. Naruto knew in his heart that the Great Toad Sage was likely referring to Otsutsuki. Kaguya, the time left for him to get stronger, was running out. Meanwhile, in Konoha's orphanage, Black Zetsu suddenly appeared before Kabuto Yakushi. As soon as Kabuto saw Black Zetsu, he alarmingly launched Hidden Shadow to bind the opponent. Black Zetsu calmly told Kabuto not to be agitated. He was here to talk about an alliance. After saying that, he showed Kabuto a coffin. To think Kaguya actually appeared in Konoha. Just after Naruto said goodbye to the Great Toad Sage, he suddenly saw a statue of Jiraiya outside. Naruto instantly plunged into a sorrowful mood. He asked Fukasaku when this was built. Fukasaku replied solemnly that it was probably shortly after the Ninja War ended. Looking at his master's statue, Naruto couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Would the current him be his master's pride? Putting away his sad thoughts, Naruto bid farewell to Fukasaku and returned to Konoha. He immediately found Hashirama under his guidance. He quickly learned the method of fusing Sage Jutsu and wood style. After all, Naruto himself could already perfectly integrate the right arm containing Hashirama's cells. With further training, his Sage Mode would ascend to a higher level. At this time, in Konoha's orphanage, the sudden appearance of Black Zetsu left Kabuto Yakushi somewhat at a loss. According to Naruto's account, the opponent should have already been sealed. Black Zetsu calmly told Kabuto not to be agitated. He was here to talk about an alliance. After saying that, he showed Kabuto a coffin. Inside the coffin was none other than Kabuto's former orphanage director, Nanu Yakushi. Kabuto instantly lost his reason. He furiously activated Sage Mode and lunged forward. Black Zetsu sneered, stepped aside, and hid behind Nanu's coffin. Unwilling to damage the director's corpse, Kabuto abruptly halted his attack. With a solemn expression, he demanded to know Black Zetsu's goal. Black Zetsu stated casually that he could create a world where the director existed for Kabuto. Suddenly, a space-time rift opened before Kabuto. Kaguya slowly floated out from inside. The terrifying oppressive aura made Kabuto instantly freeze in place. Kaguya got straight to the point, stating that in order to deal with those who would arrive in the future, she needed Kabuto's power and intellect to build an army for her. The gap in their levels made Kabuto unable to even look Kaguya in the eye. He instinctively jumped backward, turning his legs into a snake tail to quickly escape. But Kaguya's figure appeared before Kabuto once again. She spread her hands and unleashed the Danjutsu she used to control the Rain Village in the past upon Kabuto. Kabuto's entire body instantly ceased all movement. His eyes were empty, and his whole body was covered in a green glow. Shortly after, the green glow disappeared. Kaguya walked up to Kabuto and asked, "Who are you?" Kabuto revealed his former wicked smile. Flicking his snake-like tongue, he replied, "I am your most loyal subordinate, Lady Kaguya." Seeing the successful subjugation, Kaguya smiled wickedly. Right at this moment, many clones were awakened by the commotion earlier. They flocked to Kabuto's room. Seeing this, Black Zetsu immediately hatched an evil idea. He told Kabuto to personally eliminate that bunch of onion-headed Shin clones. Kabuto slowly activated Sage Mode. Several giant snakes suddenly swooped down on the clones. A storm of blood and chaos ensued. Looking at the onion heads falling one by one, Kabuto's eyes, for some reason, suddenly became extremely blurry, although his will had been rewritten. The emotions deep in his heart still caused tears to involuntarily roll down his cheeks. Seeing this scene, Black Zetsu smiled in satisfaction and then ordered Kabuto to abduct the sleeping Sarada. His goal was to steal the Ninetales within Sarada. Time moved to the next morning. News of the massacre at the orphanage yesterday immediately sent shockwaves throughout Konoha. Naruto felt extremely guilty. If he hadn't left Konoha without authorization during this time, he surely would have noticed some clues. Madara was long accustomed to life and towards these people who had little connection with him. He wouldn't stir up any sympathy. Only the fact that they could actually infiltrate right under their noses made him guess that they highly likely possessed spacetime. Ninjutsu, Kabuto Yakushi's bizarre disappearance gave him a strong, ominous premonition. He told Naruto to immediately contact Orochimaru to come over. The sooner the better. Suddenly, Sakura frantically rushed into the Hokage's office. The news of Sarada's sudden disappearance made everyone gasp in horror. Madara forcefully suppressed the rage in his heart. By now, he was basically certain who the mastermind was. Black Zetsu. Naruto also felt a sense of foreboding. He stood up and told Shikamaru to immediately contact the other villages. The 5th Ninja World War is likely about to break out. To think Sasuke actually met Uchiha Madara. At this time, the news of Kabuto defecting from Konoha alarmed the entire village. Naruto conducted some analysis. Now that Otsutsuki Ishiki had been defeated, their only remaining enemies were Kaguya and Black Zetsu. He guessed that the reason Kabuto was taken likely had only one purpose. The enemy had their eyes on Kabuto's ability to control Ito Tensei. Hearing Naruto's point, Tobirama praised that was finally not as airheaded as he was during the Ninja War. He believed that soon, Kaguya would likely launch a massive attack on the ninja world, with the goal being to once again reclaim what she considered her lost chakra. The top priority right now was to immediately hold a 5-cage summit to inform all villages and simultaneously notify Orochimaru to prepare for activating Ito Tensei. They had to beat Kabuto to the punch as much as possible and reanimate those powerful ninjas to their side. Although Naruto strongly opposed using Ito Tensei, right now, even if he didn't use it, those deceased would just be summoned by Kabuto. After a moment of hesitation, he agreed to Tobirama's proposal. This task would be handed over to Tobirama, the creator of Ito Tensei, and Orochimaru, who brought it to its full potential, to complete together. With tasks assigned, Madara looked at Naruto and said that only 6th level jutsu could work on Kaguya. Therefore, he told Naruto that before the Great War, he must regain control of the 6th power. Naruto nodded, stating that he understood and would use his time outside of Hokage duties to find a way to enhance his strength. Hearing this, Madara scolded Naruto. He believed that right now they didn't have time to play his little Hokage house game. He told Naruto to temporarily hand over the village affairs to Shikamaru or Kakashi to manage. For the upcoming period, Naruto should focus entirely on training. At these words, the two people enjoying the show on the side were instantly startled. Kakashi was fine with it. But Hiruzen had been Hokage for nearly 50 years. He finally got to return to the world of the living. Couldn't he even enjoy it a bit? Kakashi saw through Hiruzen's thoughts. So he volunteered. to take over as acting Hokage during this time. Madara nodded upon hearing this. Then he looked at Naruto and asked again, "What's going on with that brat Sasuke? Ever since we parted ways last time, there has been no news from him." Hearing Sasuke's name, Naruto's mood immediately dropped. Previously, he had sent a bird to tell Sasuke to return to the village, but he hadn't been able to contact Sasuke at all. It was as if he had completely vanished from the face of the earth. Far away in the freezing lands of the north, Sasuke couldn't help but sneeze. Beside him, a little girl wearing black clothes stepped forward, asking with concern, "Are you okay, Master Sasuke?" And this little girl was stunningly Uchiha Hikari from the Warring States period. Sasuke gazed toward the direction of Konoha. After over a year, it was time to return to the village. Meanwhile, in a graveyard in the Hidden Stone Village, several ninjas were guarding the recently deceased Onoki's body. Suddenly, a man wearing a red cloak appeared before them. Before these ninjas could react, a chill spread across their necks. In the next second, the guarding ninjas all collapsed. Kabuto mockingly stated, "What a bunch of trash." He then walked up to Onoki's grave and revealed a cold smile. Another powerful ninja was added to the ranks. Similar to the situation in the Hidden Stone Village, the major nations successively experienced the exact same thing overnight. Kabuto, who had years of grave robbing experience, was extremely well practiced at this. The corpses of almost all powerful shinobi were inexplicably stolen. In just 2 days, Kabuto once again forged an Edo Tensei army, even more formidable than the one in the Ninja War. At this time on the moon, Kaguya found Otsutsuki Toneri, who had previously been sealed by Urashiki. She absorbed Toneri's chakra into her own body. Driven by Toneri's chakra, her Byakugan successfully evolved into an Azure Blue Tenseigan. Inside Kaguya's sleeve, Black Zetsu snickered wickedly. Now, as long as Urashiki captured the Eight-Tails Killer Bee, they could make this world feel the pain of her being sealed. To think Obito was actually reanimated via Edo Tensei. At this time, Kabuto Wakushi used Edo Tensei to summon the powerhouses of the past once again. First to appear were the Akatsuki members, minus Itachi, along with past cages of various villages and renowned experts. Next came Jiraiya and the White Fang. Sakumo had even Haiden crawled out from the dirt. Suddenly, Black wickedly brought over biological material he had found at Madara's former base. As the Edo Tensei hand signs finished, the person summoned was none other than Obito, wielding dual Mangekyou Sharingan. Shortly after, Obito slowly opened his eyes. He felt his own body, unexpectedly realizing it was an Edo Tensei body. When he looked up, he found that the people before him were actually Kabuto Yakushi and Black Zetsu. Without a word, unleashed double Kamui on Black Zetsu. Seeing that Black Zetsu was about to be twisted in half, Kabuto hastily clapped his hands together, seizing control of Obito's body. He couldn't help but sigh. Controlling this guy, Obito, I really can't let my guard down for a second. With his body bound, Obito was highly displeased. He asked Kabuto what his goal was in reanimating him. Kabuto got straight to the point. Right now, the 5th Ninja World War is about to break out. As the mastermind behind the previous war, you should clearly understand why you were summoned, right? Seeing Obito immobilized, Black Zetsu stepped forward and mockingly stated, "Obito, this traitorous ant, deserves to continue being controlled like an ant." Hearing this, Obito shot Black Zetsu a contemptuous glance. He remembered when he gave Kakashi the temporary double Kamui experience. He clearly saw Black Zetsu getting sealed too. Now that Black Zetsu was alive and well, it meant Kaguya had most likely been unsealed as well. He asked Kabuto who their opponents were. Upon learning it was the Allied Shinobi forces led by Madara and Naruto, a smile couldn't help but form on Obito's lips. Naruto again, he sighed. There truly is no era without conflict. It seems during his time dead, a lot had happened. But what puzzled him was, why did that guy Madara team up with Naruto? Kabuto smiled wickedly, telling Obito not to rush. He would soon meet them on the battlefield. Thinking about seeing those familiar old friends again, Obito was actually looking forward to it a bit. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of Konoha, Orochimaru was also working as fast as possible to perform Edo Tensei on the genes he had collected. The first person he thought of reanimating was Jiraiya. After all, Jiraiya had always been a regret in his heart. But Orochimaru's Edo Tensei failed. This meant someone had already reanimated Jiraiya. And that person could be none other than Kabuto Yakushi. Orochimaru couldn't help but feel a strong, ominous premonition. He once again brought out the biological material of former Akatsuki members for Edo Tensei. But ultimately, only Itachi was successfully reanimated. Orochimaru looked at Tobirama, shaking his head, expressing, "It seems Kabuto beat us to the punch." He guessed that the reason Itachi wasn't reanimated by Kabuto was probably because Kabuto subconsciously didn't know how to face the man who had once brought him back to the right path. Tobirama stared intently at Itachi, assessing him. Is this the ninja who wiped out the evil Uchiha clan? He truly has an extraordinary bearing. Looking at his beloved Uchiha Itachi as always, Orochimaru couldn't help but flick his snake-like tongue. At this moment, Itachi woke up, discovering that he was reanimated by Edo Tensei again. He was full of surprise. He looked at Orochimaru in front of him, and his eyes instantly turned into the Mangekyo Sharingan before interrogating, "Is it your turn this time?" Orochimaru smirked wickedly, telling Itachi not to get agitated. "It was Naruto who requested your summoning this time." He told Itachi that if he didn't believe him, he could go ask Naruto himself. He hadn't placed any control over Itachi's movements. Upon hearing Naruto's name, Itachi's gaze sharpened. He knew that unless it was an absolute last resort, would never agree to the use of this jutsu. Something incredibly troublesome must have happened in the ninja world. He immediately asked Orochimaru how Sasuke was doing. Orochimaru smiled and said that regarding Sasuke, he should go ask the Hokage himself. To think Itachi actually met Sarada. At this time, Orochimaru had once again cast Edo Tensei. His goal was to summon Jiraiya and the Akatsuki members. But ultimately, only Itachi was successfully reanimated because the others had already been reanimated by Kabuto beforehand. After giving Itachi a brief explanation, Orochimaru took him to find Naruto. When Itachi saw Naruto wearing the Hokage cloak, a slight smile appeared on his lips. He congratulated Naruto on truly becoming Hokage and asked Naruto to quickly tell him what had happened. Naruto smiled broadly and then apologized to Itachi. To combat the incoming enemies, he had to disturb the deceased once again. Naruto told Itachi everything that had happened since he ascended. During the Ninja War, he stated with pride that he really did bring Sasuke back to Konoha. Hearing this, Itachi's lips curved up again. He thanked Naruto, saying, "Entrusting my most precious thing to you was indeed the right choice. It seems you and Sasuke have walked a wonderful path together. I always believed you guys could do it." Although Naruto was extremely happy hearing this, when he thought of the enemies the ninja world currently faced, his gaze lowered once again. A great ninja war was likely about to break out again. Itachi told him not to worry. Working together, they would definitely achieve final victory once again. Just then, Madara came over. From Naruto's memories, he knew Itachi was the ninja who undid the Edo Tensei during the ninja war. Now seeing the man in person, he praised him once again, stating, "The Uchiha aren't without worthy successors." Suddenly, Kurama interrupted their catch-up session. He stated solemnly that right now he could faintly sense the chakra of another Nine Tails. This chakra was undoubtedly coming from that little girl, Sarada. Without hesitation, Naruto activated Nine Tails chakra mode and maximized his sensory abilities. At the same time, he used a chakra arm to share the location with Madara. Madara guessed that the Nine Tails inside Sarada must have been extracted. Otherwise, Naruto wouldn't have been able to suddenly sense its chakra, a Jinchuriki. Once their tailed beast is extracted, will surely die. The situation was grim. Madara immediately opened a space-time portal on that location. Following that, Naruto, Madara, and Itachi entered it together. A purple sky covered the earth. What met their eyes was Black Zetsu and Sarada, unconscious on the ground, having had the tailed beast extracted from her. The moment his adrenaline instantly spiked, he immediately hurled several truth-seeking orbs at Black Zetsu. But right then, a black vortex suddenly swirled wildly. beside Black Zetsu. The next second, Madara's truth-seeking orbs were absorbed. The newcomer was exactly the Edo Tensei Obito. Naruto and the others were instantly dumbfounded. Naruto shouted his name. But Obito was currently completely under Kabuto Yakushi's control, possessing no consciousness of his own. Black Zetsu mockingly remarked that Madara was just like his old self. He hadn't changed at all. Madara stated disdainfully that, regarding old scores, he would definitely settle them properly with Black Zetsu. But right now, saving Sarada was the priority. He didn't want to waste too much breath talking nonsense with Black Zetsu. He launched a limbo attack against Black Zetsu and the others. Kabuto immediately controlled Obito, bringing Black Zetsu with him into intangibility mode. Naruto took the opportunity to use a chakra to pull Sarada from the ground to his side. He then told Madara to retreat for now. Madara immediately opened a space-time portal. After laying down a harsh threat to Black Zetsu, he hurriedly returned to Konoha. Upon returning, he used the summoning jutsu to call forth the other half of the Warring States period. Afterward, he took this half of the Nine Tails and sealed it into Sarada's body again. Shortly after, Sarada finally regained consciousness. Everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief, seeing everyone gathered around her. She was a bit stunned. Looking at Itachi in front of her, she fell into deep thought. Where is Dad hiding? Is he messing with me? Naruto revealed Itachi's identity. She is exactly the brother Sasuke admired the most since childhood. People are finally welcoming the 5th Ninja World War. At this time, Sarada noticed that Itachi looked very much like her father. She curiously asked who this person was. Naruto smiled and introduced him to her. He is the brother Sasuke admired the most since childhood, which means he's your uncle. Uchiha Itachi stepped forward, gently poked Sarada's forehead, and told her he looked forward to getting to know her. Sarada blushed out of shyness. So the reason Dad likes poking people's foreheads originated from her uncle. Hearty laughter echoed through the room. After a few days of brief tranquility, the cages from the other villages, at Naruto's invitation, all arrived in Konoha. Naruto shared all the intel they had gathered regarding Kaguya's resurrection with everyone. At the thought of having to fight members of the Otsutsuki clan again, Chojuro couldn't help but gulp. Naruto told them that upon returning, they must prepare the civilians for evacuation and mobilize all ninjas ranked Chunin and above. 3 days later, they were to gather on the plains of the Land of Fire. Due to the peace the ninja world experienced in willing to become ninjas had declined year by year. The allied shinobi forces formed by the 5 great nations this time amounted to just over 20,000 people. It was a far cry from the 100,000 strong allied forces of 16 years ago. But unlike before, Naruto, who was once the target the allied forces sought to protect, served as the supreme commander of the allied forces. The ninja world had once again reached a critical moment of life after an impassioned, rousing speech by Naruto. The morale of the allied forces was the major divisions, personally led by the various cages, stationed themselves respectively at strategic points where the enemy was likely to appear. Shortly after, Minato, acting as the vanguard of the surprise, discovered something unusual outside a cave. Relying on his powerful sensory abilities, Minato could clearly sense that beneath the cave, there were tens of thousands of chakra signatures. He guessed that these were the white zetsus that had fallen dormant after the ninja war. Now, they had been reawakened by Kaguya. But as he ventured deeper, the scene instantly left him utterly shocked. Inside the hollowed-out mountain stood a towering divine tree. The divine tree was absorbing nutrients from the earth. Its flower bud looked as though it was about to bloom. Suddenly, Minato felt a chill run down his spine. He quickly did a backflip to create some distance. The attacker was none other than Kabuto Yakushi, originally intended to sneak up behind Minato and alter his Edo Tensei talisman, so he would obey his commands. But Minato's reaction speed far exceeded his imagination. He praised him, saying, as expected of the yellow flash, Minato left a flying thunder god mark nearby. This intel-gathering mission could be considered highly fruitful. Given that he was deep behind enemy lines, he didn't want to get into a prolonged fight. Waiting for the right moment, Minato used Flying Thunder God to return to Naruto's side. Tobirama and Shikamaru immediately formulated a strategy. Based on the intel Kaguya's goal is to plant the divine tree and activate the infinite Tsukuyomi to reclaim the chakra scattered across the ninja world. In that case, she will inevitably deploy the white to buy time for the infinite Tsukuyomi to activate. Shikamaru told Naruto to do what he did 16 years ago, using the multi-shadow clone jutsu and sending his clones to join the various divisions. This would allow him to detect the white zetsus potentially mixed in among them. Naruto's true body, along with Madara and the main forces, would strike directly at the enemy's heart at Black Zetsu's base. By now, Kabuto's Edo Tensei army was ready. Kaguya violently swiped her sleeve, and the vines of the divine tree connected with the Edo Tensei army and the white zetsus. Soon after, the aura of the Edo Tensei army and the white zetsus surged exponentially. Kabuto asked in surprise what was going on. Hearing this, Black Zetsu explained to him, Mother is using the divine tree's power to greatly enhance their strength. With preparations complete, the Edo Tensei army and the white zetsus mobilized together. The Fifth Ninja World War had officially begun. To think Minato actually encountered the Edo Tensei Jiraiya at this time, Naruto finally kicked off the Fifth Ninja World War. Upon learning of this, Kaguya gave an order, signaling the army to deploy immediately. Kabuto Yakushi knew Konoha's weaknesses very well. He placed the former Konoha ninjas, led by Jiraiya, at the very front as the captains of the surprise attack units. Soon, Minato, who was also part of the surprise, encountered Jiraiya in the forest. Seeing this, Kabuto immediately released his emotional control over Jiraiya. Jiraiya woke up, feeling overwhelmed with emotion. He never expected that he would meet his disciple again in this manner. Minato called out Sensei. In absolute shock, he angrily reprimanded Kabuto for daring to summon Jiraiya. Seeing the sorrowful expressions on the Konoha ninjas' faces, Kabuto burst into wicked laughter. He originally wanted to see Naruto's expression when he met Jiraiya again, but he didn't expect the first person he would also be a disciple of Jiraiya. Have a good catch-up with your master. To reunite you two. I went through quite a lot of trouble. Just as he finished speaking, Jiraiya launched an attack. A massive scale fire style, great flame bullets swept towards them. Minato continuously leapt sideways to dodge the attack, while simultaneously throwing several flying thunder god kunai in all directions. He praised, as expected of Jiraiya-sensei. A normal great flame bullet can actually have such a massive scale. Jiraiya couldn't control his body. His mind was still conscious. He warned Minato. All possessed strength that far surpassed what they had when they were alive. Minato ordered the ninjas behind him who knew water style to collectively cast a water style jutsu. The fierce collision between fire and massive cloud of smoke. Using the smoke as cover, a flying thunder god kunai suddenly appeared in front of Jiraiya's chest. Holding a Rasengan, Minato flashed over while thrusting the Rasengan towards Jiraiya. He apologized to him in a low voice. He had to seal his master first. Jiraiya was taken aback by Minato's speed. He immediately cast Needle Chizo, using his long hair to block the Rasengan. The Rasengan ultimately failed to break through Jiraiya's defense. Minato praised, as expected of Jiraiya-sensei. The two then engaged in a fierce taijutsu battle. During the intense fight, Jiraiya asked how Naruto was doing now. Minato stated with a hint of pride that the little guy was now the Hokage of Konoha, and also the supreme commander of this allied shinobi forces. Hearing this, Jiraiya was overjoyed. He couldn't wait to see Naruto. But in his current state, being controlled by someone else, he really didn't know how to face him. Minato told Jiraiya not to worry about that, as he already had a solution. Suddenly, Kabuto playfully stated that playtime was over. He stripped away Jiraiya's emotions and launched Toad Oil Fireball at the ninjas. Seeing this, Minato immediately flashed to the front of the allied forces and used a space-time barrier to teleport the Toad Oil Fireball away. But just as one wave settled, Jiraiya's Earth-style Swamp of the Underworld had already followed suit. The enhanced Swamp of the Underworld instantly turned a radius of hundreds of meters into a swamp. Kabuto controlled Jiraiya to maintain the jutsu's activation, intending to engulf all the ninjas just like that. But Minato's figure suddenly appeared behind Jiraiya. Kabuto found it hard to believe a swamp of this scale actually couldn't stop Minato's advance. Minato smiled confidently. Earlier, during the first Rasengan clash with his master, he had already left a mark on Jiraiya's back. And the hand signs Minato was forming now were exactly those of the contract seal. He severed the control contract between Jiraiya and Kabuto. Jiraiya instantly regained his freedom. Furious, Kabuto slammed his fist on the ground. Only now did he realize just how terrifying the genius who single-handedly ended the Third Ninja World War truly was. People finally arrived at the battlefield of the Fifth Ninja World War. At this time, Minato had successfully severed Kabuto's Edo Tensei control. Jiraiya. With Jiraiya's help, Minato's side quickly sealed the other Edo Tensei ninjas on the field. He decided to take Jiraiya along to assist Naruto. Naruto was currently on his way to find Kaguya. Suddenly, he sensed that the ninjas in a certain area not far away were in a state of panic. That was exactly the second division of the allied shinobi forces, led by the ones they were fighting against were the reanimated Kaki Genkai ninjas like Zabuza and Haku. Facing these ninjas who possessed immortal bodies and troublesome abilities, the allied forces were gradually falling into a disadvantage. In the nick of time, a golden flash roared past. Zabuza, Haku, and the others were sent flying by Naruto's Rasengan. Seeing Naruto's arrival, everyone cheered. Looked at the blonde man before him, sensory-type ninja, finding him he was very absolutely certain that this was the same Naruto who fought them last time. Seeing Naruto's growth, the two couldn't help but sigh at the passage of time. From back then had actually become the Hokage. Kabuto was well aware of the power of Naruto's letting Zabuza and the others continue to chat with Naruto would surely lead to trouble. He directly stripped away their autonomy and prepared to deal the killing blow. Before losing consciousness, Haku and Zabuza begged Naruto to stop them once again. Naruto nodded in agreement. He decided to step in personally. Seeing this, Rock Lee signaled the sealing team to get ready. The battle would likely end very soon. In an instant, the battlefield was enveloped in thick white mist. This was exactly Zabuza's hidden mist jutsu. But Naruto now had the sensory abilities of Sage Mode. Even if his eyes couldn't see, he could clearly pinpoint the enemy's locations. He used chakra arms to constantly grab at Zabuza and the others while Haku was dodging. He shot several flying needles at He smiled and said that there was a jutsu he had always wanted to try. With that, he formed hand signs and cast deep forest emergence. Numerous large trees instantly burst from the ground, rolling forward towards the Edo Tensei ninjas. Zabuza drew his greatsword and continuously slashed at the incoming forest. Naruto stood his ground, continuously spurring the forest's growth. In the end, all the Edo Tensei ninjas were tightly entangled by vines. Before being sealed, Haku praised Naruto for truly growing stronger. The current you will definitely be able to protect the things you truly cherish. Zabuza, on the other hand, asked Naruto to pass his regards to Kakashi. Naruto responded to them with a thumbs up. Watching Haku and the others ascend, his expression suddenly turned solemn. It was time to end this farce. Kabuto originally intended to send the other 7 ninja swordsmen into the fray. But seeing how Naruto was performing, he knew that sending them out would just be throwing their lives away. It was time to bring out the heavy hitters. At this time in the desert, Kabuto controlled the second Uchiha, known to summon 3 coffins. Inside them were the third Raikage, the second Mizukage, and the third Uchiha, Onoki. The second Mizukage found himself reanimated by Edo Tensei once again. He complained, "What is up with ninjas these days? They won't even let us rest in peace for a few years." Mu saw that among the reanimated was his former disciple. A hint of sorrow flashed across his eyes. After Onoki woke up, he sighed that he too would see the day he was Edo Tensei'd. In today's ninja world, there was probably no one left who could stop their particle style. Soon after, in the desert, they encountered the 3rd Division of the Allied Shinobi Forces led by Gaara. Far away at the Allied Forces headquarters, the Sensory immediately reported the situation appearing at the 3rd Division's location. Tobirama extended his senses in that direction. Is this chakra signature ... those guys? He decided to personally go and meet these old friends from the past. People finally lead the Hokages to join the battlefield. At this time, Kabuto was manipulating Mu and the others to launch a surprise attack on the Allied forces. At headquarters, Tobirama decided to take Hiruzen to provide support. They used Flying Thunder God to arrive at the front lines. Mu, who was currently engaging the Allied immediately sensed an anomaly. He and Tobirama were, after all, old acquaintances from the same era. He couldn't help but remark that Tobirama was actually reanimated by the Jetsu he himself old rival invented from the past battlefield. Tobirama also felt a tinge of excitement inwardly. The Allied forces on the battlefield instantly regained their confidence. Kabuto controlled Mu to cast Deathless Bewildering Cover, concealing himself. Tobirama immediately tried to sense him, but even he, one of the top sensory ninjas in the ninja world, could not locate the second Uchiha right now. He couldn't help but remark that during the time he was gone, Mu had become quite adept. The cloaked Mu silently approached the motionless Tobirama. Then, with an assassination strike as they crossed, he directly shattered half of Tobirama's body. Having succeeded in his sneak attack, he was that Tobirama was truly getting old and able to even dodge such an attack. But Tobirama smiled confidently. He told him he'd better look at his own feet. At this time, a massive number of explosive tags suddenly burst from the ground, entangling Mu. Tobirama, utilizing his Edo Tensei body, activated mutually multiplying explosive tags. The massive number of explosive tags continuously summoned more explosive tags, continuously delivered focused, concentrated detonations on Mu's body. The Allied ninjas were completely awestruck seeing this scene. Is this the kind of battle found in Shippuden? When the smoke cleared, Mu's Edo Tensei body had already been blown to smithereens. Tobirama signaled the sealing team behind him to step forward and seal him. But suddenly, the sound of particle style, atomic dismantling rang out from the sky. Onoki unleashed particle style. At the sealing team, the third Hokage immediately cast several Earth style to block walls in front of everyone. Tobirama, who was still regenerating his body, a sigh of relief. He turned to look at Onoki not far away, only to realize that the kid from the Two Scales clan back then had actually grown to look like this. He couldn't help but feel like he had traveled through time. Onoki sneered, saying that he was no longer the powerless kid from the past. After speaking, he cast Earth style, moving Earth core, pushing Gaara high into the sky. The sealing team had no choice but to abandon the idea of sealing Mu. Suddenly, the second Mizuki's dissatisfied voice sharply criticized Tobirama. How can you start fighting without even saying hello? Tobirama looked solemnly at the second Mizuki. Troublesome opponents were appearing one after another. Without a word, the Mizuki summoned a giant clam. The giant clam spewed out a massive amount of mist. This mist would create a mirage that rendered all attacks useless. Tobirama warned everyone to be careful. Just as he spoke, the Mizuki launched water balloon jutsu. These water balloons would explode upon contact. Seeing this, Tobirama told everyone to fall back, while simultaneously casting water style, water blocking formation all the incoming water balloons. The ninjas behind him, seeing this, could all only side that Tobirama was the true god of water in a desert. He could actually unleash a water-style jutsu of such scale. When the smoke cleared, the Mizuki's figure was nowhere to be found. Gaara had previously fought the Mizuki and knew the weaknesses of his jutsu. He used his sand to find the invisible giant clam. Tobirama immediately formed hand signs, launching water-severing wave to slice it in half. The Mizuki's true body was revealed once again. Seeing this, Gaara wrapped the opponent with sand. Just as the seal was about to succeed, the Mizuki suddenly used steaming danger tyranny. Water vapor and all formed an incredibly fast clone of the Mizuki. Once this clone gets heated up, it would expand and repeatedly explode. At this time, Onoki, the third Raikage, and the fully recovered Mu also arrived here, having learned from the previous ninja war where the cages were defeated one by one. Kabuto decided to have these cages fight as a team this time. The third Raikage charged forward, unleashing Hell Stab, three-finger Nukite against the Allied forces. Critical moment, Minato appeared in front of the Raikage with Jiraiya. He smiled and asked, "Am I late?" A massive battle was on the verge of breaking out. People actually run into the Akatsuki grouping up. At this time, Minato had brought Jiraiya to the 2nd Division's battlefield. Jiraiya was just about to show off his skills. but found a familiar voice calling out to him from behind. He turned around to realize it was actually the third Hokage. Without another word, Jiraiya ran over and threw his arms around the third Hokage's shoulders, even though he had heard from Minato on the way that everyone was resurrected. Seeing his master again, he still couldn't control his emotions. Not being in the village when the third Hokage died had always been a pain in his heart. Being able to meet again now was truly wonderful. Tobirama looked at the Macho Man Jiraiya crying tears of joy and asked the third Hokage in confusion. The third Hokage introduced him. This was exactly his other disciple. Jiraiya immediately composed himself and greeted Tobirama. Tobirama appraised Jiraiya, smiling and praising the third Hokage for taking in such excellent disciples. Tsunade went without saying, having his older brother genes, she certainly wouldn't be weak. That guy named Orochimaru, in terms of research, even surpassed himself. And this current Jiraiya looks quite impressive. He could sense that within the opponent was Sage Chakra identical to his older brother. This, Jiraiya chuckled and rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Suddenly, Kabuto manipulating moves smirked wickedly, saying, "That's enough for the touching master-disciple reunion." The third Hokage took the initiative to propose a sparring match with Minato. He had long heard that a junior of his claimed the title of the Ninja World Ninja. Now he could finally test his speed against him personally. Kabuto gladly relinquished his control over the Hokage's actions. Seeing this, Minato casually scattered several flying Thunder God kunai around the area, making it convenient for him to freely warp amongst them. Seeing Minato's proficiency with Shuriken Jutsu, which he deeply passed down to him, Jiraiya nodded in satisfaction. At this point, the Hokage charged forward, extending the fingers to unleash Hell Stab, two-finger Nukite. Minato, unfazed, tossed the kunai in his hand upwards and teleported away using Flying Thunder God, dodging the Hokage's attack. Then, he immediately warped back to the kunai he had just tossed. This was a move he once used while fighting the fourth Hokage, but when Minato lunged downwards with Flying Thunder God, he realized that it couldn't pierce the third Hokage's defense at all. The Hokage executed a death roll, slashing backward with his two-finger Nukite. Minato ducked at the very last narrowly dodging this lethal blow, after which he immediately backed away to create the ultimate shield and the ultimate spear. He thought the Hokage was truly a terrifying opponent. The Hokage also commended Minato's reaction speed, finding it on par with his own. It was time to settle this. He charged fiercely once again, thrusting his arm forward. And this attack was nothing other than his ultimate killer move, Hell Stab. Minato activated his Sage mode, pushing his sensory abilities to the max. At the same time, he condensed in his Handa Chakra Sphere of a new type of Raisin Shuriken. The two clashed against each other. The moment the one-finger Nukite was about to strike Minato, the Hokage smiled, thinking he had won, but Minato's figure suddenly vanished and appeared behind him. Following a shout, Sage Art, Golden Light, third-generation wine-style Raisin Shuriken, echoing through the sky. This was exactly Minato's improved version of the Raisin Shuriken. Based on Naruto's the jutsu, immense power directly hit the Hokage. The powerful wine style tore through his lightning-style armor. The Hokage couldn't believe it. He recalled that during his first exchange with Minato although earlier, the kunai hadn't pierced his defense, it left a Flying Thunder God mark. Looking at this second person to ever dodge his one finger, he couldn't help but remember Naruto, who had dodged this move last time. Minato smiled and stated that he is exactly his son. Hearing this, the Hokage had an epiphany. No wonder they both have blonde hair. Looking at the contract's seal Minato left on his body, he sighed with emotion. The younger generation is truly fearsome. It's just a pity he isn't a ninja from the hidden cloud. He willingly allowed the Ito Tensei to be released, returning to the afterlife. Losing a major asset, Kabuto beat his chest in frustration. At this time, as Naruto was on his way to find Kaguya, Obito suddenly brought the former Akatsuki members to block his path. Naruto is finally going to have the final battle with Kaguya. Just as Naruto was about to reach Black Zetsu's base, former Akatsuki members suddenly blocked his path. Naruto was somewhat surprised. The people before him were Deidara, Kakuzu, Sasori of the Red Sand, as well as Nagato and Konan. Naruto told Madara and Hashirama to continue heading to Kaguya. He would handle these people. He was just about to go up and greet Nagato and Konan, but Kakuzu spoke first. Seeing Naruto's unique blonde spiky hair, he asked if Naruto was that Konoha Jinchuriki brat from back then. Naruto's expression changed. Let me formally reintroduce myself. I am now the leader of the Hidden Leaf Village and the supreme commander of the allied shinobi forces of the 5 great nations. Kakuzu sighed endlessly. He didn't expect the hot-blooded brat from back then to have actually become more reliable than money. Deidara was also very surprised to see Naruto's growth. In his impression, Naruto had always been an unpredictable ninja. Nagato smiled faintly. He stated with a hint of pride that Naruto was his junior disciple. Although Naruto was very happy to see Nagato, and his heart again was filled with immense guilt. Because in the past, after the battle with Pain ended, he promised Konan that upon becoming Hokage, he would definitely bring peace to the Hidden Rain village. But now that he was Hokage, the Hidden Rain had once again become a base for Kara. There had never been true peace. Suddenly, Kabuto, speaking through Obito, that the wickedly stated ends here. Deidara held up a handful of clay birds with both hands and threw them at Naruto. Naruto ignited a chakra arm and shattered all the birds. Deidara found it hard to believe. Is this the power of the Nine Tails? The clay touched by that golden arm could no longer be detonated. Without a word, he prepared to use his ultimate self-destruct attack. Naruto knew the power of his self-destruction. With the speed of lightning, he flashed in front of Deidara. Then he formed a magnet-style Rasengan, immobilizing him. Deidara was instantly neutralized. Seeing Deidara defeated so quickly, Sasori took a few steps forward and took out the performance of 100 puppets. Scroll that Kabuto had prepared for him in advance poured entirely out of the scroll. Seeing this, Naruto condensed a raisin shuriken in his hand. Staring at the cutting sound produced by the high-density rotation of the chakra sphere, Kakuzu couldn't help but gulp. After all, this was the exact jutsu that finished him off. Naruto threw the jutsu straight ahead. Just one jutsu shattered the hundreds of puppets charging at him. At the same time, he used with style walking wall to trap Sasori inside. Afterward, Naruto apologized to Nagato and Konan. He had to seal them here for now. Konan asked Naruto to go all out and defeat them. Although being controlled was a terrible feeling, being able to see Naruto again, this flower of hope still blooming, she sighed with relief that this Ito Tensei was somewhat meaningful after all. The current Nagato and Konan were naturally no match for Naruto. Naruto quickly sealed Kakuzu along with Nagato and Konan. Before being sealed, Nagato looked gratifyingly at his own body. He praised Naruto for becoming even stronger than before. Naruto's face was solemn and grave, just like last time. He gave a thumbs up to send off his fellow disciple and promised Konan that this time he would definitely bring true peace to the Hidden Rain. At this time, on the outskirts of the Hidden Grass Village, through White Snake reconnaissance, finally found Kabuto's secret base. The moment Kabuto realized it was he immediately activated Sage Mode, preparing for battle. But when he saw Uchiha Itachi walking out from the shadows, Kabuto's eyes suddenly lost their killing intent. The scene of Itachi redeeming him in the past constantly flashed through his mind. Holding his head in his hands, he struggled painfully on the ground. After a long while, Kabuto suddenly stopped struggling. The jutsu Kaguya had placed on him still overpowered his own will. He laughed wildly, stating that Lady Kaguya's mission was the correct one. Orochimaru flicked his snake-like tongue. He didn't expect that he couldn't avoid fighting his beloved disciple after all. At this time, Naruto finally caught up to Madara and Hashirama as space-time portals suddenly opened in the sky. The next second, the ones to appear were none other than Obito, possessed by Black Zetsu, and to think Naruto was instantly defeated by Kaguya. Naruto and Madara finally found Kaguya and Black Zetsu, but they didn't expect that Kaguya had become even stronger than before. Having had the experience of fighting Toneri, Naruto could tell at a glance that Kaguya's current eyes were none other than the Tenseigan. He stepped forward and asked Kaguya what her goal was. Kaguya turned to look at Naruto and Madara. She noticed that the chakra emanating from Madara right now was extremely not inferior in the slightest even to Hagoromo's. Kaguya's goal was naturally to gather all the scattered chakra in the ninja world back into one. Madara told Naruto to stop wasting his breath talking. Black Zetsu, who had played him for a fool his entire life, was someone he absolutely had to kill. Ultimately, their negotiation didn't make any crucial progress. Kaguya used her long hair to launch an attack. While dodging, Naruto continuously called out to Obito, who was controlled by Black Zetsu. At this moment, Obito had absolutely no self-awareness. Suddenly, Kaguya activated a Metaminaka, shifting the dimension to a lava dimension. Naruto and Hashirama instantly started plummeting. Madara, possessing the Rinnegan and Six Paths power, could manipulate gravitational fields to levitate in the air. Among the three of them, only Hashirama had never witnessed Kaguya's Metaminaka. He asked in astonishment, did she just summon an entire dimension over here directly? Seeing that Naruto and the other were about to fall into the magma, Madara used his limbo clones to swap places with them. He used to truth-seeking orbs, shaping them into footholds for the two. The crisis was temporarily averted. Seeing this, Black Zetsu began to advise Kaguya. They set their primary target, who lacked the ability to fly. Kaguya's long hair suddenly transformed into countless sharp sunben. Madara immediately activated Susanoo to shield everyone, but Kaguya's 80 Gods vacuum attack followed closely behind. Fists, each with power comparable to the evening elephant, came crashing down. Naruto used his chakra fist to counterattack, while both sides were deadlocked. Madara used Limbo to land a punch right on Kaguya's face. Naruto breathed a slight sigh of relief, but he knew Kaguya hadn't used her full power at all, whereas he himself had used every ounce of strength he had. At this moment, Kaguya fired all killing ash bones at the four of them. Naruto's pupils shrank, telling Hashirama and the others to be extremely careful. By this jutsu, even an Edo Tensei body would be completely destroyed. Everyone dodged with all their might, but it was obvious Kaguya gave Naruto special attention. Several all-killing ash bones suddenly converged on him from all directions. Naruto had nowhere left to dodge. Fortunately, Madara used Limbo to swap places with him again. In the end, after being pierced by the all-killing ash bones that crumbled into dust and taking advantage of Kaguya's opening, Naruto made a savage dash forward. Kaguya was sent flying backwards. Hashirama followed closely, unleashing a flurry of attacks from his giant Buddha statue upon Kaguya. But these attacks only served to delay Kaguya's offensive momentum. Naruto never expected that. The all-killing ash bones, which used to be a taxing jutsu for Kaguya, she could now use casually without any effort. Could it be because of the Tenseigan? After Hashirama's attack ceased, the direction Kaguya flew happened to be right above Naruto. Black Zetsu shouted that now was the best chance to strike Naruto. Kaguya immediately utilized Yomatsu Hirasaka to shoot an all-killing ash bone straight into Naruto's body. Naruto's body instantly crumbled into ashes. Seeing this, Black Zetsu burst into arrogant laughter, but in the next second, his smile suddenly froze. Madara suddenly pierced through Black Zetsu, who was enveloping Obito from behind. Meanwhile, the ashes of Naruto suddenly turned into a puff of white smoke. Earlier, while Hashirama was stalling Kaguya, his true body had transformed into one of the truth-seeking orbs behind Madara. Separated Black Zetsu from Obito's body. Peeling him off, Madara laughed wildly, about to tear Black Zetsu into pieces. But Kaguya immediately shifted the dimension to the super-gravity dimension. Black Zetsu seized the opportunity to flee into Kaguya's sleeve. Everyone's movements were restricted by the immense gravity. Naruto told Madara to ignore Black Zetsu for now and prioritize restoring Obito. Madara used a Rinnegan Genjutsu to manipulate Obito into forming the hand signs for releasing the Edo Tensei. As a gust of wind swept by, Obito finally broke free from Kabuto's control and regained his consciousness. To think Kaguya actually activated the infinite Tsukuyomi again. At this time, Naruto had finally succeeded in freeing Obito from Black Zetsu's control. Humiliated and enraged, Black Zetsu suggested to shift the dimension to the acid dimension. Kaguya initially disagreed, because transferring to the acid dimension would cause damage to herself as well. instantly had an ominous premonition. He immediately activated Susanoo, enveloping Naruto and the others inside. In the next second, the dimension shifted to a vast sea of acid. Enduring the agonizing pain of being corroded, Kaguya used Yomatsu Hirasuka to escape this dimension. Madara's Susanoo, although temporarily protecting them from the acid sea's corrosion, was continuously melting. If this continued, they would certainly die. Naruto made a prompt decision, telling Obito to first transfer everyone into the Kamui dimension, although this temporarily got them out of danger. To return to Kaguya's other dimensions, they still had to go through the acid sea first. Meanwhile, Kaguya transported herself back to the ninja world. Black Zetsu suggested that she use this gap while Naruto and the others were absent to activate the infinite Tsukuyomi. Thus, they quickly captured the remaining 8 tails, gathering all the tailed beasts' chakra. Afterwards, the infinite Tsukuyomi was activated once in the ninja world, except for the Edo Tensei ninjas, completely under the infinite Tsukuyomi. On the outskirts, a massive purple Susanoo blocked the intense light. The people inside were none other than Sasuke, who had just returned from an alternate dimension. Hikari asked Sasuke in confusion about what had happened. All these anomalies made her worrying about Boruto's safety. Just moments ago, the towering divine tree in the distance suddenly vanished out of sight. This gave Sasuke an ominous premonition. That was precisely Kaguya absorbing the divine tree, which had gathered the tailed beasts back into her body. At this time, Naruto and the others in the finally came up with a countermeasure, with Madara's Susanoo holding off the acid. Obito, repeatedly using Kamui, finally brought everyone back to Kaguya's Genesis dimension. But getting back to the ninja world using just Obito was impossible. After the intense light outside faded, Sasuke dashed to the spot where the divine tree had just disappeared. At this moment, Minato and the other active reanimated ninjas they were Edo Tensei bodies. They were unaffected by the infinite Tsukuyomi. With Minato's explanation, Sasuke finally learned what had transpired. He guessed that for Kaguya to shake off Naruto's grip and activate the infinite Tsukuyomi, it was enough to prove that Naruto run into some trouble. Therefore, he asked Jiraiya to summon Fukasaku the Toad Sage. Sasuke's goal was to have Fukasaku use reverse summoning to summon Naruto back, because Fukasaku had signed a reverse summoning contract with Naruto in the past. As a result, just as Sasuke hoped, Fukasaku indeed successfully summoned Naruto back. Seeing that Naruto was safe and sound, Sasuke breathed a sigh of relief inwardly. He muttered, "You dead last ... Seeing Sasuke finally back, Naruto was both surprised and overjoyed. When he saw Uchiha Hikari standing next to Sasuke, he asked Sasuke in surprise what was going on. Sasuke extended his right hand, signaling Naruto to fist bump him, as explaining it this would be faster. The moment their fists bumped, ripples formed in their minds. Memories of Sasuke's encounter with Uchiha Hikari were continuously transmitted to Naruto. Not long after Sasuke set out on his training journey scroll from the Warring States period, he coincidentally found the place where Hikari was sealed. According to the records on his clan's secret scroll, Sasuke knew she was precisely the girl possessing the power of Yachihoko, so he unsealed her. But what puzzled Sasuke was that Uchiha Hikari actually knew Boruto. Naruto was also extremely surprised by this. But now was not the time to talk about this, because Obito and Madara were still stranded in Kaguya's Genesis dimension. They are finally going to have their final showdown with Kaguya. At this time, Sasuke successfully regrouped with Naruto through reverse summoning jutsu. Naruto summoned Madara and Obito back. Seizing this brief moment of peace, he could finally have a good catch-up with Obito. Although Obito was very happy to see everyone again, as the main culprit behind the Fourth Ninja World War always felt he had no face to see everyone again. Hearing this, Naruto once again activated his talk no jutsu. He smiled and said to Obito, "Everyone forgave you a long time ago, although you did indeed do many wrong things in the past. In the end, without your help, we wouldn't have been able to defeat Kaguya." To commemorate Obito, Naruto had even kept the exact same hairstyle as him. Seeing Naruto, who had already become hawkish, Obito smiled with relief. At this moment, told Obito not to dwell on the past. Your sensei and his wife forgave you a long time ago. What you need to do right now is help Naruto fight Otsutsuki. Kaguya, and your power is undoubtedly indispensable to Naruto. Finally, under everyone's persuasion, Obito finally opened his heart. Just then, a massive number of meteorites suddenly appeared in the sky. This was precisely Kaguya utilizing the Tenseigans' ability to manipulate celestial bodies. Naruto and his team only individually used their signature moves to continuously clear away these countless meteorites. Seeing that the meteorites were ultimately all blocked, Black Zetsu told Kaguya to shift the dimension to the desert dimension. This was exactly the dimension where separately isolated by Kaguya in the past. Reigning over the sky, Kaguya coldly looked down upon the humans below. Suddenly, with a wave of her hand, she activated the Tenseigans' manipulation ability. Instantly, sand flew and stones rolled. A colossal sandstorm, guided by Kaguya's palms, swept towards Naruto and the others. Seeing this spectacular sight, Naruto gasped in amazement. This scene. He'd definitely never play with sand again. Seeing this, let out a soft snort to block wind and sand. There's nothing more suitable than planting a forest. He clasped his hands together and cast 6 paths. Deep forest emerged. Tens of thousands of saplings burst through the desert surface, growing tenaciously. In an instant, they turned into a forest spanning several kilometers. Kaguya's raging sandstorm, after being blocked by the forest, was no longer enough to inflict lethal damage. Madara then placed his hands on the ground, using natural energy to draw up groundwater from hundreds of meters below. In the barren desert, massive waves reaching the sky eventually swelled up, overpowering the desert tornado. Seeing this spectacle, Kaguya frowned slightly. To think a sandstorm of this scale was blocked just like that. She descended into the desert, directly thrusting her hands into the surface of the sand, and launched all-killing ash bones. Dance of the Seedling Fern. Naruto, in sage-tailed beast mode, immediately sensed the approaching danger. He warned everyone to be careful. The next second, all-killing ash bones shot out of the ground endlessly like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. Sasuke used Susanoo to carry Naruto into the air. Obito activated his intangibility mode, but Yamatsu, Hirasuka's wormhole, suddenly appeared in front of Sasuke. An all-killing ash bone shot out from it. Seeing this, Obito told Sasuke to quickly use Minato to swap places with him. The all-killing ash bone ultimately passed right through Obito's intangible body. Black Zetsu was extremely furious. The hard-won opportunity they finally grasped was actually ruined by that trash Obito. Sasuke fiercely fired several Susanoo arrows at Kaguya. Kaguya slightly utilized the 80 God's vacuum attack, effortlessly repelling the incoming arrows. She immediately activated Yamatsu. Hirasuka unexpected arms reached out from behind towards Naruto. But Naruto, relying on his powerful sensory abilities, turned around and grabbed Kaguya's arms. Then, utilizing unmatched monstrous strength, he forcefully pulled Kaguya out. Naruto immediately followed up with a magnet-style Rasengan capable of restricting her movements. Sensing the danger, Kaguya immediately shifted the dimension to the ice dimension. Everyone was instantly frozen in ice. Kaguya took the opportunity to create distance between herself and Naruto's group. She condensed a golden chakra light sword in her hand. Inside the ice, Naruto's gaze sharpened. This was exactly the Jutsu Toneri used to slice the moon in half. The golden whole reincarnation Naruto finally defeats Kaguya. At this moment, Kaguya shifted the dimension to the ice chakra light sword suddenly formed in her hand. This was precisely the golden whole reincarnation Otsutsuki Toneri once used to cleave the moon. Kaguya swung down vertically at the frozen Naruto and the others. The ice. Madara then violently ignited his large swords above his head to parry, but the golden whole reincarnation Madara's entire Susanoo in two. Ultimately, the entire ice dimension was the cleaved dimension. Madara's expression turned grave. So this is the Tenseigan, which rivals the RINNEGA and double reincarnation explosion. Two massive tornadoes swept towards them. Seeing this, Madara formed hand signs and cast sage art. Yin released lightning. The tornadoes were ultimately blocked. Susanoo appeared above Kaguya. The Susanoo sword slashed down vertically, but Kaguya turned her head and effortlessly absorbed Susanoo with her left hand. however, launched the 80 Gods vacuum attack at Sasuke. Sasuke's Susanoo
and his
shattered
body was
entirely.
sent flying backward.
Naruto created thousands of shadow clones, while using the clones to keep Kaguya occupied. His true body arrived beside Obito and Madara to defeat Kaguya. The only way was to seal her once again. And currently, the only one who could use 6 paths to Baku Tensei was needed to do was next. Create an opportunity for Madara to seal her. Sasuke used Amida to Chikara to swap Kaguya with the air in front of them. Coordinated pincer attack. Seeing this, Kaguya shifted the dimension to the super-gravity and the others were instantly rendered immobile. In the next second, Kaguya's all-killing ash bones shot toward Naruto. Just as Naruto was about to be pierced, Madara placed a limbo clone in front of Naruto. That limbo clone turned to ash in Naruto's stead. Sasuke used Amida to Chikara to launch a surprise attack on Kaguya. In desperation, Kaguya shifted back to the Genesis dimension to evade. Chakra continuously flowed along her into her body. Shortly after, accompanying a world-shaking roar from the rabid goddess form, all-killing ash bones rained down upon the ground like a barrage. Immediately used chakra arms to pull everyone to his side and told Obito to quickly enter intangibility mode under the connection everyone of the shared Obito's intangibility ability. In the end, they finally managed to survive this rain of bone. Suddenly, Kaguya's rabid goddess form began to expand continuously. The time left for Naruto and the others was running out. Kaguya's figure slowly emerged from beside the truth-seeking orb. The 4 of them launched their final all-out assault. Infused the power of Kamui into ultimately forming Chidori, a pitch-black Kamui Chidori, taking advantage of Kaguya's all his limbo clones to attack. While Kaguya was defending, Naruto used a chakra arm to grab Sasuke and hurl him violently forward. Wielding the Kamui Chidori, rapidly closed in upon noticing this. Kaguya immediately fired all-killing ash bones. Obito yelled for Sasuke to just immediately use Kamui to erase all the attacks flying towards Sasuke. The lightning in Sasuke's hand thrust forward. The Kamui Chidori successfully pierced through Kaguya's shoulder. Madara grinned. It was time. He shaped all his truth-seeking orbs into the sword of Ninoboko and charged at Kaguya. Kaguya used her only remaining hand to meet the attack. Both sides gave it their all. Ultimately, Kaguya's body was pierced by the sword of Ninoboko. Madara immediately formed and activated 6 paths to Baku Tensei. Kaguya and Black Zetsu were finally successfully sealed once again. The expansive truth-seeking orb, floating in the air, dissipated with the wind. Everyone looked at each other and smiled. The group returned to the ninja world together. Madara undid Kaguya's infinite Everyone Tsukuyomi. Was entirely freed from the vines of deep forest emergence. At this point, the story of Madara's return, Part 1, comes to a close. However, the battles in the ninja world are far from over. Awaiting them are such as cyborgs and the god of Otsutsuki.